Can we crack on? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Economy Committee meeting today. Before I go any further, I would like to welcome Tony Conn from Bangor Grammar School, Lower Sixth. And all I would like to say is, please, please, please do not be put off by politics by what you're going to see. But you've got a great MLA here.
Not that bad. Don't let him put you off.
And welcome, and please enjoy yourself. And after the committee or whatever, if you want to ask any questions, obviously, please do so with the rest. But welcome. Bye-bye. Okay. Declare the meeting open to the public. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, usual routine with sort of mobile phones and devices. Those in the public gallery, can you make sure your mobile devices are put on silent and turned to aeroplane mode? And could I just make it very clear that 3G and 4G should not be used, and it's not permitted to take photographs or recordings of the meeting. Thomas, good morning to you. Good to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had formal apologies from Connor, Alex and Kiva. Are there any other apologies?
Sinead Bradley is delayed and will be late, and Thomas McConnell is definitely late but may not be able to make it at all. So we're going to be tight on numbers.
Marvin?
Marvin's car is here, so he should be about.
In the bell bank.
Okay.
IT.
Okay. Always has IT problems. Okay. Gentlemen, if we just have a look at the draft minutes. The minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of January were agreed on Monday. May I refer you to the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of January at page 3 of the table papers. Are we in agreement? Any comment?
Okay.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Item number 3, chairperson's business, or should I say acting chairperson's business. And again, for the record, I will put on, despite the apologies received from Connor and the rest of the Sinn Féin representatives, my extreme disappointment that Sinn Féin have decided to absent this from this very important committee, and particularly bearing in mind of Theresa May's comments yesterday about Brexit and the opportunity to talk with Intertrade Ireland. I think we've missed a great opportunity, and I would encourage full participation in all these events going forward. Just moving through again to chairperson's business, I said during agenda item 6, I'll ask the members to consider whether to hold additional meetings over the next number of days in relation to the rapidly moving renewable heat incentive. And I'd like to advise members that the energy seminar and showcases for colleges, NI and the Open University scheduled next week have now been cancelled due to the dissolution of the Assembly. I would like to put on record I'm extremely disappointed that this has occurred, because I think energy policy is one of the things that we as a committee have been all over, and not to be able to do this because of whatever reasons where the Assembly is being dissolved. I think once we come back, and hopefully we will all be back, we get into a position where we can immediately get back to dealing with the energy policy and what we need to go going forward.
Can I just clarify, is dissolution midnight on Tuesday or midnight on Wednesday?
My understanding is midnight on Wednesday, but I am willing to be told I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding. Dissolution happens on the 26th, but my understanding is it's immediately on the 26th.
Yeah,
so
but that doesn't rule out us doing things on Wednesday the 25th.
It doesn't, but our problem with the two showcases the organiser has withdrawn and asked to close that down. The energy round table was always predicated on involving a lot of other assembly staff and a report coming out of it. We've had a lot of concern from colleagues, but also from those attending, that they come, they do this, and it doesn't go anywhere. And part of the problem is because it's a committee activity, and if a report doesn't come out, then it falls away and will have to be resurrected.
The reason I asked, I appreciate that at that end, Peter, there's a certain sense of it doesn't particularly sit very logically. The counterpoint would be, to what extent have people actually engaged in preparatory work for that meeting, which is now going to be nugatory? And secondly, I appreciate that there may not be the capacity for a report, but even the physical airing of the issues is of some value. In the event that we're not back in short order after the election, it may nonetheless be of some benefit to.
Stephen, I'll discuss that with the clerk after, and we'll get back to you after the committee. We just need we'll have a thought about it, and then we'll circulate our ideas amongst the committee going forward. And again, obviously, the meeting with Open University, I thought, was something that we should have been looking to do. Looking to next week's committee, it's currently scheduled to go ahead but we can consider its format at item 6, particularly when we're talking about the Renewable Heat Initiative. Now moving on to our evidence session with Intertrade Ireland, and Thomas, thank you very much indeed for making the journey up. I would like to highlight to members that the previous session with Intertrade Ireland was cancelled due to the department not providing the committee with a briefing paper. As well as the evidence session with Intertrade Ireland, members will hear 2 case studies. For the members, if you could look at, there's a clerk's memo at page 14, and the Intertrade Ireland briefing is at page 17. And thank you very much indeed for that, Thomas. The committee will hear 2 case studies first, and who's going on the international flight?
That'll be ourselves.
Greg, you would be excellent, and we will try not to delay you, and we'll definitely not stop you getting on your flight. And before moving on to the rest of the evidence sessions, so Greg and Miles, could it open up to you now, and then we can sort of talk to Thomas afterwards. So we don't want to delay you, but welcome and thank you very much indeed in coming and talking to the committee.
Thank you. I suppose, do you want to just give us a bit of background just about the project? Yeah. Okay. Suppose the company's called Black Box. We manufacture gym equipment, specialised in kind of end-to-end design and fit out for gyms for a range of different sectors, whether it would be sports teams, independent gyms, do a lot in military, quite a broad sector, do a lot of export outside of Northern Ireland into Republic, do a lot in England, Wales, Scotland. Currently doing a project in Dubai as well. So I suppose Miles came on as a design engineer for the project, and Miles can give you a bit of an outline, but yeah, obviously he's helped us secure a number of different contracts, both locally and internationally. Would you give a bit of background?
Yeah, basically, like Greg alluded to, whenever I came on, my skill set was in CAD design and had an understanding of their sort of industry, so it was a good fit. Main sort of benefits towards the company have just been allowing Greg to secure contracts and large tenders with people from outside of the country, and as well work a bit more remotely. With a CAD design service, we can create a full 3D render to scale, which the clients can visualize their facility. So it cuts down a lot of the back and forth and meetings and such. So by doing that, we've been able to secure tenders with Sri Lanka cricket team, jobs in Dubai, Australia, 7 sites with the Irish Defences, which was one of the main projects, and we have then obviously with our CAD design service and sort of bringing some engineering to the company, we've been able to increase our product range. With the increase of product range, that's sort of led to our now trip to China today, so some good growth within the company over the last 18 months.
Excellent news. Yep. Thomas? What's your timescale when do you need to go? Because we can take questions now, or we would.
We're fine. I mean, we're playing this afternoon, so we're
all right.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, over to you, Thomas.
I suppose just to link in and how this matches Intertrade Ireland, this is part of our Fusion programme. So effectively, when we assisted the company, it was in order to get the graduate for the company, and under our Fusion programme, it's a 3-part agreement where we have a company, a graduate, and then a higher level institute of education in order to assist. So the work has been fantastic with Black Box, and they've done so very well, and they've completed now the 18 months in December just gone, and it's great to hear the success that they had. And I know they're involved with Ulster Rugby and Brighton and Hove Albion, so they've a good wide range of clients, as you've heard from the others as well. And we think they're going to be a fantastic company. They're very ambitious, and we're keen to get them as much exposure as we can as well. The second company we have today now is E&C Fitzgerald, and this is a different programme. It's called Acumen. It's our sales programme, and the sales programme basically is obviously trying to assist a company through sales, while the other company was dealing with Fusion, which is a technology transfer programme. So perhaps maybe Eamon might give a discussion on how his experience of the Acumen programme.
Certainly, thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Our company, ANC Fitzgerald Limited, we manufacture prefabricated buildings, sectional buildings. We have 3 particular markets. With the agricultural market, which involves agricultural buildings, mostly poultry housing, residential buildings, which is one-off bespoke design houses for obviously people to live in, and commercial units. Such we've done units for Ards Football Club and down at Oxford Island marinas and lifeboat shelters. Buildings which are quite light and where you can't get a proper foundation in. You can do them in a raft without and a lot of technical jargon. Basically, they're light enough to stand on their own, and they're engineered to stand in areas where you wouldn't normally get a foundation in. So we've done a lot in that. We're mostly had been based working inside Northern Ireland, but we were anxious to get some more sales both in the Republic of Ireland and in mainland UK. So we applied for the programme. At the time, I gone down to, there's a series that Intertrade Ireland had done about court meet and meeting customers in different parts. And down there we made some contacts. We're lucky enough to meet Paddy Savage, was one of the representatives there, and we applied for the Acumen programme, which is where we got a student, newly qualified, to come and help you do sales, particularly in the Republic of Ireland, but not exclusively. So we were lucky enough to go through quite a simple progress. It was very simple, and you were must say, for Intertrade Ireland, they give you lots of help on how to interview and go through, because we're obviously being a small company, we didn't have the human resources. We were lucky enough, we got a young fella, Nigel Kennedy from Letterkenny, and he was with us. The programme was for a year, and inside that year he also attended the Jefferson Smurfit Business School down in Dublin, which was very good. He graduated from there with his diploma, which would obviously be beneficial both for us and for him in the longer term. After the year, Nigel stayed with us for the second year, but at that stage he had applied for other jobs, and with the experience he'd had with us and with the Jefferson Smurfit qualification, he then was offered a position in New York. And beautiful low Kirkcalban is. He chose New York over Kirkcalban. So we're not as lucky as Greg is still to have that member of staff, but he did do good work in expanding the market, especially in the south. Our sales from the year he started, 2014, there was 78% of turnover, and now year on year from 15, and before he left in 16, it's gone up from 14% to 18%. So he did a lot. He brought a lot for a small company. He brought a lot of new thinking into it. It was good to have another set of eyes other than your own, because when you're an owner manager, you tend to get involved in the minutiae, and you don't if you get somebody else to do that. He helped with the market structure, and he actually improved our sales by a substantial amount. Now, we were very impressed with the scheme, and actually, now that Nigel has left, we have reapplied to see if we can get another person into it, and we're in the process of that at the moment. And no pressure on Thomas today or anything, but hopefully we shall be successful.
No, he'll obviously agree to it before the end of the meeting. He'll be,
Well, I would be very grateful. you got to share that, please.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right. Thomas.
So I suppose these are two living examples of what we do. Our remit is to explore new cross-border markets, develop new products or processes and services, and help companies to become investor-ready. And we give practical advice. We don't take stakes in business, or we don't give loans to business, but we improve capability and help people to build up this internal capability. Now, hopefully, like in this case, the graduate is still with the company, so the capability remains there, and there's more options of what can happen. And in Eamon's case, hopefully, well, at least the sales are there, and you've got the customers, so all of that's there. And the new thinking as well is very important, because what we really want is for companies to be thinking about exporting, to think about pushing on, and very, very important, in all the time. It's not to be dependent on one market, just to get out and to export. And we are a part of the Northern Ireland Exporting Strategy, and we're on that escalator where we help companies to get onto that. And our ambition will be, as the companies that we deal with eventually become Invest NI client companies and move on to bigger things. So far, we've had 32,000 businesses since our inception, and effectively cross-border trade has become quite significant. It's worth about €6 billion, but in goods alone, it's worth about £2 billion. So it's a very significant amount of trade happens.
So that's 6 billion goods and services and 2 billion in...
4 billion services principally and 2 billion for goods, a bit over 2 billion.
Okay.
So our range of supports, we have quite a wide range of supports, but we divide them into 3 categories. The first part is funding, and in doing that we do it by sourcing specialised advice and finding the right person with the right skills for a challenge in a company. So if there's a deficit in engineering or scientific or IT, we can source a graduate for that to assist a company, or in our Acumen programme we can do it trying to get some of the sales ability, or for smaller companies that wouldn't have the ability to pay for a large programme like Acumen, we provide a free service called Elevate, which just gives consultancy service and gives some contact just to get companies into the other markets. So it's all very, very positive in that regard, in building sales and capability. We also help companies to become investor ready, and we have a range of equity and capital advisory services with the Business and Angel Network in Ireland. You'll be familiar with Halo NI, and we have a network called HBAN, which we support, which is overarching for North-South, and we have about 300 business angels that assist companies to raise capital. Now, our part in that really is to get them investor ready, so that when they go in front of the business angels, at least they can pitch for it properly. And even if they're not successful there, they can go to a bank or they can go to another area in order to raise funds. So it's important just to get companies investor ready. And one of the key areas that we support this is through our seed corn competition, which we run every year, and we get quite a significant number of companies who are trained in order to fine-tune their business plan, so that we put them through, we find the gaps for them, we get them to shore them up and fix up their business plan, get their focus right, and then they can pitch properly for funds when they go in front of business angels or other sources.
How's the, Thomas, just to interject a bit, how's the, sorry, I need to declare interest here, because previously, being in the British Irish Chamber of Commerce, I was very much involved in getting the business angels together and getting sort of Glendimplex and all the rest of it behind that to try and get that process going. Are we getting sufficient money of that seed corn money available to be able to do that? Because I know that's one of the questions that we were asking previously in the past.
While we are not directly involved in giving seed corn money, but both Invest NI and EI have significant funds for start-up companies. All we're really doing is putting people in touch with business angels, or in the seed corn competition, they tend to be established companies or emerging companies that we train in order to get them ready to do that. But we don't have any funds that we actually distribute in that way. The seed corn is a competition where we actually get people to get their business plan into order and get them investor ready. Yeah,
and you get a lot of strategic advice from the board and the rest of it to be able to be in that position to do the right sort of thing. So you've got the key direction over this. So got it. Yeah, I just wanted to get that right.
Right, and then for more established businesses, we have our funding for growth advisory services, and in that we provide expertise to companies where effectively we have a roving expert who goes around and holds clinics in different areas, and companies can approach him and talk about what their balance sheet looks like. You might find that they don't have the right mix of funding, and he puts them in the right area in that. We also hold these clinics in conjunction with Grant Thornton, where effectively they attend workshops and they really go through the nuts and bolts of both their business plan and their balance sheet in order to re-establish the balance sheet into proper type of financing. So some people may have loans or overdraft funding things that should be leased and so on. So in order to get the balance sheet straightened out, we do quite a bit of that. It takes a lot of pressure off when cash was scarce, particularly a few years ago. This was a big issue for companies just to try and survive and get through it. The second strand of what we provide is intelligence. We have a business and policy intelligence unit, and from that we provide our biggest and best known item will be our business monitor, which we do every quarter. It's the largest and most comprehensive of its kind on the island. We don't have client companies, so anyone that we deal with, we have an intervention with them, and when they're finished, they're no longer a client of Intertrade Ireland, while Invest in Ireland would have client companies. So we survey 750 companies every quarter to keep our finger on the pulse of what issues are facing companies and what they see as difficulties. And from that then we can respond to that, and we also can be aware of where bottlenecks or dangers are for companies, and see can we influence people that have the control over these things in order to put it right. And also we have a very strong knowledge base with our universities and with our graduates and company collaboration, and we have strong associations with all universities and third level colleges on the island of Ireland. And as in this fusion case, you know, it could be anything from food to technology, you know, so we have a range of universities and third level colleges that have that expertise in order to supervise embedding a graduate in a company or in sales. And finally then, contacts. We have a very extensive range of networks and partnerships, which are both formal and informal, just to help businesses grow. And we have a number of conferences, workshops, master classes, and a lot of this will be bringing people in with expertise in order to help companies deal with particular issues. And we also provide a go-to-tender service which helps companies bid for public service procurement contracts. And we provide that. About 500 companies every year attend training on how to bid for public service procurement contracts. So then, coming to our own performance, we have been in operation now for 16 years, and every year since we started, we've managed to meet all our performance targets, thankfully. Sometimes with less and less money, which is the next topic that comes up. But the important thing is that companies have benefited from us being there. Over 6,000 companies have been involved directly on programmes with us. They've generated 826 million worth of trade and business development value. That's principally increased sales in their organisations. And they've created over 9,000 jobs in those companies that have been involved as a consequence of being involved in a programme with us. And the impact of our expenditure ratio is that for every pound effectively we're investing in companies, we're getting £12 back in sales or in efficiencies or in investment. So it's quite a significant impact in that regard. We have a lot of our activities are concentrated in the areas of innovation and sales, and that really is what helped this strong performance and validates it. And we do a lot of stakeholder consultation when we're doing our corporate plans to make sure we take the views of everyone on board. We have a very formal monitoring process. We don't make the figures up, like, you know, while we do the monitoring, it has been independently assessed a number of times to make sure that it is sturdy and that it is robust. And we're very happy that it actually has met those stringent tests each time it has been tested. And normally our monitoring takes place 3 years after we've completed our intervention with a company. So it isn't just an immediate effect. We wait for 3 years. And our experience of that has been very positive. Where we place graduates in companies, typically they will be there 3 years afterwards. 80% of them will still be in position with the companies. And the other 20% would have been offered other jobs and might have had more lucrative offers simply because what they...
So when Eamon expands into the States, he's already got somebody ready there.
Finally then we come to our funding. Things have been difficult and continue to be difficult, and we appreciate that. Like, you know, it's very difficult with the Assembly with reduced budgets. For us it has a very graphic graph, I suppose. It's the easiest way to say it. Since 2008 we've been on a very steep decline. But having said that, we are charged with managing the money we have. We do our best to do that. We've always remained within budget. We have met targets, and we've met higher targets with less money, so the efficiency is feeding through the system quite a bit. But we always are ready and available to take any extra money anyone wants to give us, so we'll never turn away anyone that would like to do that at any time in the future, because we have a very strong pipeline, and typically we would have 400 to 500 companies applying for 60 positions in each of the programmes we have. So we have to be very careful to manage expectation in the pipeline so that we don't over-egg it in the sense of people being disappointed in that regard.
Just for the record, with the pipeline, what's your capacity at the moment? for companies coming through?
We typically would work on about 70 fusion projects per annum, and we would have probably about 6 times that many on the waiting list of companies that could be there, but we don't develop them all to the final stage. In our Acumen programme, we'd have, again, about 60 companies, and again, similar type of ratios. And with our Elevate programme, we do about 100 companies per annum.
Just to remember.
So there's quite a spread of them, but they're the 3 main programmes that have big numbers involved with them. And the fusion projects in particular spread over 18 months, so they tend to span 2 years rather than 1. While the Acumen programmes are generally 1 year, and the Elevate will generally be shorter again. So quite a strong demand from it. So we have to manage it and spread it as evenly, and we're trying to get a good spread as well around the island. Our funding comes in the ratio of 2/3 from the south and 1/3 from the north. So we tend to try and balance the project on that basis, so that we get an even split, or as near as we can, but just generally in that regard.
And just for the record, what's the budget this year?
We don't know what this year is going to be.
Sorry, last year. Sorry. Yeah, Freudian slip there. Yeah.
Our budget is down to 8.2 million. It had been as high as 12 million in 2008, so it has come down quite significantly in that period. It's something that we're obviously keeping a close eye on, but we feel we have a lot to deliver if we have the resources to do it. So I suppose then coming to the challenges and the opportunities that we have to keep managing this high demand for our services. We have to not rake up too much anxiousness that people want to get involved, but there is a constant stream of companies wanting to be there. They all perform extremely well, and the outcomes are in the performance results. So the companies really are driven to get ahead, and effectively, we would expect that nearly every company that goes through our hands effectively will become an exporter and become an Invest NI client, and will push on to bigger things. We recently were successful in securing a co-innovate programme under Interreg. There's quite a substantial amount of money involved here over a 5-year period. The total value is over €22 million. We are the lead partner. We have partners with Scottish Highlands and Islands, Scottish Enterprise, Enterprise Northern Ireland, and the Leos in the south, and the East Border region companies. So we have a number of partners together to deliver projects in Northern Ireland and the border counties, and in the western seaboard of Scotland. It's a very exciting project for EU funding. It's for increasing the innovation ability of SMEs. So this wouldn't be an area that SMEs normally have a quick access to, so we're going to be able to deliver that. And our intention is to help 1,400 companies under the programme in a 5-year period. So it'll be quite a significant impact, and hopefully that ability will live on to do great things for our companies in the future. We continue to deliver to the Experts Plan and Export Matters and NIAS. So that's we always keep our policies and our programmes aligned in order to ensure that we're doing that, and we keep adapting to it, and we'll continue to do that. There's a challenge in keeping everyone and getting people export minded. We also have an all-island clusters programme. Basically, we carried out extensive research in 2015-16. We produced a report on clusters, and there are a number of recommendations in that report which will be a great benefit at a very high level, and we're partnering with Invest NI, the IDA, Enterprise Ireland, Science Foundation Ireland, in order to see how we can progress that for the benefit of the whole island. And there are some exciting items in that could actually be very, very good in respect of developing clusters further. And finally then we have to manage implications of Brexit. Things become clearer as we go along. We're an implementation body, so whatever happens we have to help people to deal with whatever the issues are. We have piloted some programmes to see. We had one in Cookstown, one in Dundalk and one in Monaghan. And basically what we're helping companies to try and plan for it in some reasonable way. And we do that by laying out, explaining what the 4 freedoms are, then asking companies to consider, do those 4 freedoms impact anywhere in their business? And if they do, what would they do about it if that was to change? We also look at WTO tariffs as a possibility to see if there's difficulties there. And for example, we're saying to companies, if you have a product that's going to be adversely affected by a WTO tariff, maybe through a fusion program or innovation, you can actually alter your product so that it'll attract a lower tariff than might be there. And we don't know what the end tariffs are going to be. We're just taking worst case scenarios. But our primary interest is that companies innovate. We'd like them to do it anyway. It'll give them more strength going forward. For a lot of small companies, it isn't possible for them to diversify to other markets. When people say, go to different markets and try and avoid this, it may not be so possible for small companies who very much need to trade locally or fairly locally. So in that regard, we're saying, look, how about diversifying your products and maybe get more products that could help you get out of this. We will continue to take feedback from companies. In our business monitor in 2016, 80% of businesses were relying on the TV news for their knowledge about Brexit. So that's really what spurred us on to see could we get more information in a way. The uncertainty obviously is very difficult to gauge. 46% of companies in the south of Ireland thought that there would be a negative impact from Brexit. 23% of companies in Northern Ireland felt there would be a negative impact. 20% of companies in Northern Ireland felt there would be a positive impact. 9% of companies in the south felt there would be a positive impact. So you can see big divergence of views of what uncertainty can do and how people can perceive it to be. So all we really want to do is help people channel their way through it and get the best possible outcomes from themselves. So we're saying, like, the things they should do is control what they can control right now. They were immediately faced with currency issues, and in that regard we provided advice on hedging and revenue matching and sterling loans and euro loans in order to match out your income. We talk about developing relationships now, which is a good time before any changes come. Get yourself established with your partners in the other jurisdictions. Much easier to do before any other things come along.
We have to.
And innovation we see is key. We really feel the company should really push for innovation and try and move themselves along the value chain anyway. And this could be a good opportunity to grab it now and go for it. And that they're the primary thrusts of what we're trying to do. So I'll stop there. If you want to ask me any questions, I'm quite happy to take them.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom. Thanks very much, Greg, Miles and Eamon. Yes, we'll go for a couple of questions. Just as... I'm sorry. And thank you for... Thomas, as you probably realise, we'll be talking a lot about Brexit today, and particularly from what's happening from yesterday going forward. Thank you for outlining some of the views of the impact and the rest of it. But have you been able to, and I know that you're quite an innovative organisation, so I assume you've been working very closely with your board and various other people, sort of the risk register and some of the likely things it would be. Can you sort of outline sort of how some of the sense, particularly sort of in the innovation sector and what's happening in sort of the SME sector and how they see some of the impacts that they're coming along? And I particularly note you talked about sort of the European funding and the Interreg funding. And obviously we expect the Chancellor of the Exchequer to maintain that funding through a given period of time. But there's other, and you and I both know, there's lots of other programmes that the EU runs through them like a, it's like a circuit cable that runs through everything that's done. Could you just outline to us some of the sort of the key sort of difficulties and maybe do a bit more detail of that, because that's some of the information we might need going forward. That's the first question. The second question is, I was going to say there was £52 billion worth of trade going back and forth, euros worth of trade going back and forth across the RIC every year. I think it's probably now 52 sterling. I think it's getting pretty close to what it's going to be. Northern Ireland's probably only got about 10% of that. What an Intertrade's view would be about how we could help to grow that, because it needs to be closer to 20% or more if we're going to get sort of any form of sort of economic benefit going forward, particularly now that we've got the challenges of that. And the third question is, for some people who don't really know, there's a question of duplicity, not in that sense, but the fact that you're doing a lot of things that Invest do, you're doing a lot of things that EI do. You talked about sort of Science Foundation Ireland and some of the things as well. What's the USP of Intertrade Ireland? And one of the questions will be increasingly asked because your budgets are being pressed down. What are you doing that couldn't already be done within the other organisations? And just those 3 points, please, Thomas. Thanks very much indeed.
Starting with EU funding, in relation to Interreg, we have got assurance or comfort from the Chancellor that any projects that were funded or approved by October would be funded by the Exchequer in the event of any shortfall of funding from the EU. That may have caused some reciprocal problems then for the Irish government, because they were unsure of the position of what they would be left in if they were part funding this as well.
Yeah.
So that has been clarified, and now we're assured that we can continue on and go ahead with the Interreg project that we're involved in the full knowledge that the funding is provided.
Okay.
There is a mid-term review in that, but basically that's just to make sure that it's all working according to plan. So we're comfortable in that regard, like that the Co-Innovate project is well funded and established.
Okay.
Other EU funding that particularly important to us is Horizon 2020. And Intertrade Ireland has been a facilitator in helping bring together parties for the Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland Horizon 2020 projects. A target of 175 million is what we're trying to achieve in that period. So far we're on target to achieve that. We had a success ratio of about 15.3%, I think it was, compared to a European success ratio of 14% just at the end of 2016. So we're performing well. We're still attracting good projects, getting good science there. It's a great source of funding, and it brings great expertise and knowledge into economies, and I suppose that's one of the items we don't know what the future will be subsequent to 2020, but in the meantime we continue to work towards our 2020 target and getting there, and we'll see what transpires there. There's tremendous benefit.
Is there any specific things from the funding stream at the moment that are just about to start, some sort of key things we should be aware of?
There was a small kind, once the uncertainty was there in a big way, there was a small element of slowdown, in the sense that companies were holding back on certain elements, particularly bigger companies would hold back on investment or getting involved in big projects until they saw what the level was going to be. There's also was uncertainty as whether or not, if the UK, being one of the partners with, say, the Republic of Ireland, if they were to pull out, would your project be severely damaged by losing one of your partners in the course of that? But I think once people got a steer on it, there's more certainty now in it, and things are flowing again, and people got back to getting down to business. It certainly is one area which we feel will be key in the negotiations, because of a tremendous loss. It's a lot of money, 175 million to build up to the North-South projects. We are not involved in other EU funding. We've never been involved in getting funding from the EU. All our funding has come from the two governments. So in relation to other European funding, we're not involved in any way. So we're at least spare that element of it. But it could have impacts on universities and third-level institutes who depend heavily on research grants, and quite a substantial amount of funding from Queen's and Ulster University in particular over the last few years have obtained very significant amount of money from the EU. So it's possibly a concern for them indirectly, but we have no direct knowledge of it.
Yeah.
The third point, we were talking about duplication or possible. There is a clear mandate that we do not duplicate any service that Invest NI produces, or we do not duplicate any service that Enterprise Ireland produce. And in that regard, we're currently going through a landscaping exercise to make sure that we all map all the services that we provide, so they're exclusive and they do not overstep. And any time that we want to bring forward a new proposal, or Invest or EI, we have an interagency meeting where we agree these things, so we don't end up doing something else. And we also bring that down as well to the councils and the Enterprise Northern Ireland and the LEOs, to make sure that people don't start reinventing the wheel. So many of the areas that we're involved in are exclusive to us. The Acumen programme, we do it on an all-island basis, and we do it on behalf of Invest NI clients and EI clients. So there isn't anything like that. In relation to the Fusion programme, it's the only one of its kind on the island, and again the technology transfer that we do in that is exclusive to us, and again most of the clients will actually be Invest NI or EI clients who go into that programme. In relation to public tendering, we do all the tendering, all the tender training in the Go to Tender programme. We do that in conjunction with the local councils, with Invest in EI, and effectively, anytime other people consider doing it, we offer the service. They can badge it themselves. We're happy enough. We do it in conjunction with both Chambers of Commerce and with local councils to make sure that it's not duplicated and we get consistency in what's being provided. So we'll be very confident there is no duplication. We have regular meetings with the other agencies. We review our programmes, and we're doing a landscaping exercise which would make sure that there isn't anything there that's very close to or as near as, because that'd just be a waste of resources.
Thomas, in normal circumstances, we would be delighted to see the outcome of that landscaping exercise, but maybe in a month or so's time, when things are restored, we probably would, I think, like to see an example of the landscaping exercise, because it's obviously one of the questions. Yes, but if you could still send it to the clerk, that would be excellent. That would be fantastic.
Right, yeah.
And
the middle question then.
The middle question.
Could you just remind me again, sorry, in relation to?
The middle question was about the £52 billion, euros worth of trade. How can we get Northern Ireland from having 10% of that to 20 to 25% of that? Because that's where it should be under the normal sort of rules of the economy.
The key message that we get for growth, and the evidence we have for growth, is that companies that export do 3 times better than companies that don't.
Yeah.
That's the first part. And we try and drive that through to every SME to try and get them to think in that direction. The second part is that companies that innovate also do 3 times better than those that don't. So these are the 2 key planks we see in growth. And it's through the growth to get the trade. So effectively, everything we do, we really try and drive towards both innovation and exports. And that's been a central plank in order to do that. I think with the export policy that we're now pursuing, the NI Exports Plan, I think that's a very good map and guidance path in order to achieve that. We're working very closely and hand with Invest in I in order to do that. I think it's ambitious, but it's well joined and well thought out. And I would imagine that we will see the benefits of that starting to rise now as we go into the future. It's only a fairly new plan, but it's all very, very synchronised. And I think we can become a very good feeder service into those companies. I think the scaling up of those companies then will actually become a job for Invest in I. And I think they have full capability of doing that with relative ease. So I'd be confident that companies have grown, continue to grow. Like we've got to trade of 6 billion in cross-border trade alone. That figure has risen exponentially in the last 20 years. So
no, we wanted to keep rising exponentially.
Keep going next, so we don't want it to stop. So effectively, I think basically the key planks will still remain. Keep companies focused on being exporting, keep companies focused on innovating and developing.
Okay, thanks. And just before I sort of ask somebody else, Eamon, Greg and Miles, you're classic examples of very good, very successful companies that have done very well. What are your views going? Are you confident about the future after the discussions yesterday? Or what are the challenges you think you've got going forward, and what should we be doing to help you? Because that's the most important thing. Because quite frankly, politicians are a drag, generally speaking, and you're the people who are going to transform the country. So tell us what we need to do. Greg, Miles, please.
Well, I've sat in a few with Invest in I, a few of the think tanks on Brexit. To be honest, we have been so busy that we haven't actually kind of got around to putting any strategy in there.
I like to hear that, yeah.
I mean, one of the things too, it's actually been quite hard to quantify how much we've gained from this project, because like we even forget, I was just thinking we've got sole supply rights for Sport Scotland for 3 years, which was a big tender to win. So even just like so many little byproducts. But in terms of, to give you an honest answer, we haven't actually got right. We're in a quite unique position because we have innovated from day one and we've created a unique business model, and there isn't any companies like us in the island of Ireland. So I think it is just a case of, if you do have something unique, you're gonna be able to export. So we've obviously been in quite a lucky position where we have got quite a unique business, but in terms of No, we just need to maybe slow down and have a bit of a think in terms of, you know, what the strategy is going to be. I would obviously be, and I think Miles too would be, you know, quite optimistic, you know, regardless of what happens. You know, it's in our control to deal with that, and so. But yeah, it's probably not a great answer to your question, but.
So what's attracting you to China? Because that's a big, it's culturally, I know it's a huge market, but it's a very, very competitive market.
Yeah, well, I suppose we do import. There is a proportion of sales that will come from products that we just can't manufacture here. So our kind of centre pieces of equipment is manufactured here in Belfast, but there's just certain products that you can't do at, you know, the same quality or price. So we're just going.
So an opportunity for Northern Ireland business there?
I mean, initially I would have thought we would never have done business in some of the markets that we are, but, you know, it may happen. We've got just, I mean, the UK and even Europe and Dubai, these places are kind of more low-hanging fruit. So some of the other areas, Singapore and some of these countries, is ones that we will potentially focus at, but we still are a small business, so maybe just stick with, you know, the low-hanging fruit for now, but I know it's exciting.
We're actually just in the process of doubling our warehousing size. As Thomas said, like export being a major thing. September, October, November, December were the most profitable months in the company's history. I'd say probably 60% of that, if not more, was going outside of the country. So that kind of does fall in line with exactly what Thomas was saying.
Two very clear things about that one, the two of you. Is one, congratulations, well done, keep on doing it, and we'll support you in anywhere we can. And the second one is please don't do a chain reaction, just crack on, get on with it.
No. Well, we're moving to Titanic Quarter, so it should be a nice new area for us, and taking over a Bombardier ex-warehouse, so
Yeah. Eamon, sorry, same question.
Well, the Brexit implications, we unfortunately aren't a new company, and we don't have a lot of competition. So initially it's a double-edged sword. We found that with the fall in sterling, it's actually at the moment has made us more competitive in the Republic of Ireland. So because they can buy more for their buck. So in the long term, we already had with suppliers throughout Europe, and we've already seen that core prices for raw materials are going up. So in the long term, it'll probably increase our prices. But going back to what Thomas was saying, we found the best way is to try and work outside Northern Ireland, because we can basically make the same product, put it on a lorry and send it to UK. And despite the increased transport costs into parts of the Republic of Ireland, despite the transport costs and the logistics of having crews or, you know, liaison with the customer at greater distance, we find there's a better margin. So our tactics to that, and it ties in again with what Thomas was saying, because now we got the help from Thomas and Intertrade, and now we've become an Invest NI client, and we're also have applied for their research and development assistance. So we're looking at new ways of insulating the buildings, of making them more so that they actually hold heat better, you know, more value for money and things like that, to differentiate our product from other products in the market. Because even in the north here, there is 2 or 3 manufacturers that do what we do. And you tend, if there is something successful, we have found that in Northern Ireland, people with a good reputation work very hard. But if there's too many of you in a small market, you end up cutting your margins. So actually, by increasing our export to differential markets, we have increased our profitability while without putting our turnover up massively. Even though our costs are greater, the returns are greater. And with innovation, which we are now involved in Invest NI, who I see are complementary to Intertrade Ireland. We weren't an Invest NI client at that time.
But now
we've started, and we've sort of progressed now to them. And I see it like Intertrade Ireland, from our point of view, was served well as a stepping stone to an extent to you go up to a different level. And now Invest and I were involved with them, and we're a client, and we're discussing different research and development projects. And because Invest and I are happy that as long as you're trading outside Northern Ireland, whether it be in the Republic of Ireland or England, Scotland, Wales, wherever, they count all that as export.
Yeah.
So we would feel that our export turnover will hopefully this year or early next year go to 55 to 60% of our turnover.
Excellent.
And if we can achieve that at the higher markets, hopefully that will help go against our higher cost of raw materials, bearing in mind that all our competitors are going to suffer from the same. Everybody's raw material prices are going to go up if sterling maintains its present level, which is again something none of us have any control over or know what will happen.
Yeah.
But it's being able to react quickly and to get the expert advice on doing increasing your exporting and your R&D and innovation, which we feel is going to help us throughout the uncertain times of the next how many years.
The same offers to you there, Eamon. Any time any of us get hold of us, anything we can do to help, we'll do it, because it's only by increasing exports, becoming more profitable, employing more people is Northern Ireland going to be a success, and I think that's one of the things we need to do as well. But thank you very much indeed. Gordon, please.
Thanks,
Gordon Dunn.
Chair, and welcome, gentlemen. I think we're all impressed with the presentation of you all so far, and having been on this committee for some time and the predecessor to this committee, I've been down to Intertrade, and I think, to be fair, I think you do a good job in a difficult competitive world, and I think we appreciate more and more what you're trying to do and what you have done and what you have achieved with limited budgets that have been talked about within this committee for some time, as you well know. Thomas, what about an issue that comes up and has come up before about increasing your awareness? I suppose we all see your organisation as a bit based around the border counties. What about increasing awareness throughout Northern Ireland? What have you done to try and broaden out your mission and make it more available to everyone?
There certainly is a concentration both in Belfast and in Dublin. From Northern Ireland perspective, there's certainly the greatest concentration of companies are in Belfast, but we make a conscious effort to try and spread it as far as we can to companies, and we've had a lot of success now in Tyrone. Particularly, there's a lot of engineering companies in Tyrone in particular, possibly because of the farming background. They become natural engineers anyway. You get a lot of engineering companies from that. I think on the island there's probably more engineering companies in Tyrone than there is in any other county.
Probably.
No, it's very impressive.
But we spread to all counties. I think in last year we had a company involved in at least 31 of 32 counties across the island, with all companies in Northern Ireland participating on programmes. We do outreach programmes, so we tend to have events in Omagh or in Cookstown or in Ballymena or wherever. We have to go, in order to spread the word. But basically, a lot of it is driven by demand from companies, really, and where they are. And the actual engagement at the end really will involve where the concentration of companies are, companies that are ambitious to move forward. So we spread the word as best we can. We don't have a very significant marketing budget, so it isn't that we can go out and advertise and great things. So a lot of our business comes through word of mouth and other companies talking about how well we've done. We network quite significantly with all the local councils, and we're dependent very strongly on the local councils. We've done a lot of work with ABC in particular of late, which is coming together very well. And I think that will be the conduit for getting the services spread better, is working in partnership with the councils.
Good, okay. Moving on to is the Black Box? Black Box Fitness. I think we're all very impressed with your enthusiasm and your drive and determination to succeed. How did you identify the product and the demand, and what makes it unique, really, what you're doing?
I suppose it's predominantly the end-to-end. I mean, the CAD service that when we hired Miles, we're now able to to offer. So essentially, a CAD, it's essentially a computer-aided design, so we can minimise the risk, show people exactly what the fit-out is going to look like. Some other equipment companies will either focus on, they'll either just manufacture or just import products. We would do both, but also we have quite a lot of expertise in terms of, because we do live and breathe this. Maybe some other companies are either engineers or essentially maybe just hiding behind a computer, whereas we're out in the market and we train quite a lot ourselves. So yeah, we've just done a bit of trend spotting and seen what, you know, the whole industry's moved away from machines and cardio, treadmills, etc. And so essentially people can get from a much less investment, they can get a big return. So
I would say that's probably where Black Box has captured the growth, in that they were a startup company at the right time. We could capture the functional fitness sort of craze, when by functional fitness I mean you're not walking into a gym full of treadmills anymore. You're going to see a much different landscape. And because we're an SME, we're reactive. We're both under 30. Greg has a good vision for the company, and we've just been able to capitalise on that at the right time in the market shift.
Very good. So are you making bespoke units, for customers?
Yeah, so essentially it's almost like Lego. What we do, everything is modular, and that gives us a lot of flexibility. And we've got full powder coating facilities, which again, no company in the island of Ireland would have, and most other equipment companies won't have it. So speed's a huge USP of ours. Most people would be working off a lead time of at best sort of 6 to 12 weeks, some maybe longer. We're generally doing stuff in 14 days. Sometimes we can do a whole gym inside, and it's not that often, but sometimes we can nearly do it in like 2 days. We've done 1 or 2 where someone can invest 20 or 30,000 and we can just do the whole thing from point of order. So most people underestimate how long it actually takes, either from getting change of use, planning, funding, etc. So once it comes to it, they want it straight away, and we're definitely probably the quickest company to do that big fit out. We're the quickest around. So essentially, you know, we've modelled some other companies. There's companies in America, and people say success leaves clues, you know, even Dell in their prime. So we kind of adopt a mass customization strategy where it's all about kind of customizing equipment, so in club colours, so we can powder coat, laser cut their branding in there. But it's essentially, we have got quite a lot of stock which we import from China that's quite standard in our brand, so that you just match the two together. So
you're moving everything to Titanic Quarter?
yeah,
Everything?
everything. So we were our client of Invest in I, we started in Ortist in Twin Spires, which was good. It was a low risk, and we've just outgrown that. We've about just shy of 8,000 square foot there, and we're doubling to just over, I think it's going to be about 17 or 18,000 square feet. But again, it's a future proof. We've signed a 10-year lease. We're making a commitment. Again, you know, even buying the powder coating oven and manufacturing, like, people thought we were crazy to do that, but it's paid off. So, and we are keen to keep increasing manufacturing as well, because it is, you know, we like to try and control as much IP here as possible. And we're obviously doing a bit of a recruitment drive as well. So all of that has came from, you know, this project. That's what I was saying. It's quite hard to quantify, you know, if we didn't have recruited Miles, what we would actually been able to have done.
I would say one of the major components of the internship program, which I didn't actually give credit for initially, was the Fusion program. Sorry, was the postgraduate diploma in business, which allowed me to really become more of an asset to the company and be involved in more areas beyond just a CAD design engineer. That's it. That was probably a major component of it.
And we didn't mention, obviously we worked with Trinity as well, so we didn't, you know, it was good to be able to. I can't deal with academics that much. Miles probably had much more of a contact with them. My academic days are thankfully behind me, but I mean, it was good that, you know, we were starting to move into markets where they were looking specific reports and testing, and it was beyond our skill set or knowledge, so we were able to, you know, tap into Trinity's knowledge as well for when we did need any reports. So.
Well done. It's great to see success stories. Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Just pick up on a few things that perhaps have been raised a little bit so far. First of all, just in terms of the issue of how we manage duplication and how you find your particular niche. You talked already about Invest and the councils and universities, but how do you interact with the FE colleges in particular, bearing in mind they have their own interventions that are primarily focused around skills and also supporting innovation for SMEs, so perhaps a different point in terms of the spectrum of interventions from yourselves, but how do you manage that particular interface? Also just taking into account that there is a slight asymmetry in terms of what is offered in terms of further education in Northern Ireland as opposed to what is the equivalent in Southern Ireland, where the technology colleges are probably operating at equivalent level 5 in Northern Ireland, whereas FE here will span from level 2 through to level 5, but there's a lot of a level 3, level 4 offer in terms of the skills pipeline. Just then on the Horizon 2020 issue and the European funds, one of the things that strikes us is there's a major discrepancy in terms of the level of drawdown in the south versus the north, and how that is being effectively managed. And in particular within Northern Ireland's drawdown, it's probably disproportionately weighted towards universities than SMEs. There's a gap there to be improved, hopefully. And in that respect as well, how do you interface with the contact point network that's been put in place by Invest in I and universities and GARD around a number of different assisting with the access to some of those programmes. And then finally, just around the issue on Brexit. You've touched already around some of the currency issues and export issues, issues around supply chain and how that operates, and particularly with the reality that many of your client companies will be all-island companies. They're neither a southern company or a northern company. They're trying to operate on an all-island basis. How the implications of the emerging UK position will play out in that regard. So exports is one end in terms of what comes out, but in terms of the supply chain, the fact that we have to a certain extent a fully integrated economy in some sectors on the island. And then the final aspect of Brexit, which hasn't perhaps been touched upon as much as others, is around the access to labour and what concerns are now emerging in that regard as to the ability to freely hire and recruit individuals, particularly those who are neither UK or Irish nationals, but European nationals, and concerns around that in terms of the day-to-day operation of businesses.
Starting first with how we reach out to the colleges as well. Like, no, we actually have contacts in quite a number of the colleges, and we meet and we have individuals from colleges on different steering groups we have as well in order to disseminate the information. There is always a possibility that somebody could duplicate something we do, but we may not be aware of it. Become aware of it, we always contact them and say, look, we provide something there. Usually can resolve it very quickly, and usually they're very happy as well if they are providing something, we can provide it cheaper for them, they can still get their benefit out of it. In relation to generally that's a strong network, and there are lots of engagement at different levels, and we would be involved probably with a network of about 100 researchers as well, under the radar, who are always swapping information and ideas as part of our All-Ireland Innovation Series. In the All-Ireland Innovation Series we have 4 universities: Queen's, Galway, Dublin, UCD and Cork. So we provide a lecture series, a masterclass in that, but there's an underlayer of about 100 researchers involved in that, so they still disseminate a lot of information in that regard. In relation to emerging skills needs, we effectively, so far we we've been able to fulfil all the recruit graduates that we require for companies, you know, and very often the skill sets can be very, very specific. You might need somebody that needs to know something about metallurgical properties for thermometers or whatever it is, but we've always been successful in recruiting a graduate, and we use the whole island, so at least we have the whole pool of the island of Ireland in order to grab a graduate, because it's not necessary for the graduate to be from either jurisdiction for a company, just to make sure they have the skill set. So we have that wider pool that we can assist. I suppose it is a key driver of FDI is the skill set available, and effectively Invest in I know are very closely keeping an eye on what the emerging trends are and what the requirements are. And there are more drivers of that, like, you know, we tend to be just matching individual projects, so we're not as deeply involved in it. We do feed into any questionnaires or any seminars on what skills needs are as best we can. In relation to was it Horizon?
Horizon 2020 and also the supply chain issues.
In relation to the Horizon 2020, in some cases a lot of the universities have gone and have projects. I think Queen's had one for 30 million, which wasn't part of our 175 million that we have to get. There has been a big effort by the EU in order to try and SMEs to get involved this time, because previously it wasn't the case. So it is a landscape change as well there. And we're doing our best to encourage companies, no matter how small they are, to consider getting involved. And in that regard, we've had some success of guiding people towards it. But really, it's a matter of continuously prompting companies and telling them, you know, go for this. You know, there's an opportunity there. You know, what you're doing at you would fit very well with such a program.
Sorry, Thomas, can I just interrupt you there? Greg, Miles, thank you very much indeed, and I know you need to go and go, but thank you very much indeed. And
Start packing.
knock 'em dead, knock 'em dead, and we really look forward to hearing about your success going forward as well. But thank you very much indeed. Cheers. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, please, Thomas.
And so basically, that's all we can continue to do is try and encourage companies, and I know Invest in I and EI in particular are actually pushing companies as well towards this. We were in the good position that, you know, normally you needed 3 different countries involved, so we're starting in a good position. We had 2, so that was giving us a unique selling point in order to try and encourage people to start with us on the Horizon 2020. So we've been confident still that the companies will come, that they won't be university-led, that there will be a high proportion of SMEs involved, and our experience of that has been that SMEs now are getting involved. You know, and the sums of money are substantial. You know, they can be £1 million or £2 million, which is quite considerable at any given project. So we'll continue to keep an eye on all the ones that we know are very good, innovative companies that might have projects that would fit this. Was there a third part there?
Just supply chain issues in terms of...
Supply chain issues, that hasn't risen for us yet, hasn't risen for an issue with the companies that we're dealing with, but obviously if you change in the cost of supply chain, and just even listening to the lads there, like, you know, they're getting parts from China, so obviously you probably have asked them, like, you know, what their experience of dealing with tariffs, because they're actually realistically dealing with that. But the companies that we have been dealing with, who are dealing with third countries outside the EU, have been able to manage that very, very successfully. I think a lot of it will be there's one other element I didn't mention, was the lean process and people introducing lean.
On the supply issue, I mean, as much as the third country issue is relevant, there's primarily the issue on the island, because we may well be outside the EU in the next couple of years, and if we go for what is in effect an exit from the customs union, there may well be tariff between Northern Ireland and the south.
Yeah, if there's any increase in the elements within it, like, you know, effectively we will still actually drive companies towards trying to make themselves more efficient anyway, because there's always if you apply the lean program, you can actually still get efficiency in a company. And typically Invest in I and EI would say they can get up to savings of about 100,000 per company in adopting that. So it may be that the supply chain may increase, cost may increase within that, like, but there are other ways of circumventing it by cutting your costs in other parts. That kind of.
So Gordon Lance.
Oh, no, my question was for Greg.
Oh, right, sorry. I'm sorry.
Get him back.
Would you like to put it on the record?
I think everybody else around the table has known that the brevity is not one of the strong points of anybody else here. So,
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Sinead?
I would just like to make a comment. Firstly, apologies for missing the start of your presentation, but I have to say, on the days and times that in it, it was a long overdue breath of fresh air to hear that type of presentation. That it was nice to walk in on, and I am sufficiently curious to hear, Eamon, what I missed from yourself, and that to warrant listening back, and I commit to doing that. But Thomas, one of the things that you touched on was how we talk about, we often say about our greatest asset is our skills and our people, and I firmly believe in that. And I've always been of the opinion that when we look at the world stage in terms of our economic offer, that we should have and always should measure the availability of skills on the island, as opposed to these reports that are drafted up. And I have said it at committee before, where you hear, they make presentations to companies very in-house that we're not always even aware of. And they're saying essentially Northern Ireland has this to offer in terms of a skill base. And they conveniently overlook the fact that, the island of Ireland, there is that ease of movement of people and that ease of movement of tapping into a much wider skill base than is necessarily portrayed. And I have serious concerns, as I'm sure you'll understand, on how the implications of Brexit rolling out may impact upon that. But I want to know if you feel, within your capacity, that you have any role to play, or that you could, I suppose, be the delivery of the message that skill base is there, and that any business considering looking at investing in Ireland should be looking at the wider offer instead of that breaking down.
I suppose a very important element is in relation to the graduate that goes into each company. We get a supervision from a university in the opposite jurisdiction, and given that 2/3 of our business are in the south, effectively 2/3 of the business are being supervised by universities or colleges in Northern Ireland. And there's a very strong drift of knowledge into the universities and the colleges of what the companies require. And in some cases, like we know in Queen's and Ulster University, they have adapted programmes to take into account real life situations and things that they weren't teaching that actually were useful now to incorporate as part of their engineering programmes. So that's the importance of that flow, getting it back in. We work on the basis, as we say, of an all-island basis and getting the graduates, and we don't see any threat to that. But the real thing is we want to increase the stock of graduates on the island, and we welcome anything that does that. And we think this is one of the ways that we feed into it very well, is getting real practical knowledge for graduates, feeding back into those colleges, and getting the colleges aware of how to adapt almost invisibly to market conditions. Because these are new companies that are coming up with new ideas and new technology all the time, so continuous process of improvement in that regard. And our feeling and our experience has been that the universities and colleges have been very adaptive. They respond very quickly when they see something new. They very quickly come back and say, we need to incorporate that into our next modules and whatever. So students are being educated all the time. I suppose that really is the wealth. It's really in the skills base, for everything. If you have the people that can do it and do it well. And second thing I would say is we have now done 70 fusion projects probably for the last, about 700 or 800 of these projects completed. And to my knowledge, none of them have failed. They've all gone through, and the technology is delivered and the companies still exist. So there's a very low mortality rate in the companies that are innovating. So it shows you the quality of the education system that's there as well, and how that's all feeding in. And as Greg was saying, even there, Trinity College was able to point them in the right way of what trends were emerging and so on, and distill it into a way that a company can understand. And I suppose that's one of the big things we found when we carried out a report in 2014, I think it was. We were looking at the various elements in the ecosystem, putting the SMEs at centre. And one of the blocks that's missing is the connection between SMEs and higher education institutes. It didn't feature as a major link in SMEs' heads, and we were thinking that's something that we really have to try and address as well, because they should have that linkage, in order to be able to avail themselves of it on their own bat. So it is an element that we work on and try and keep building those bridges and get those networks going. And I agree with you, that the value is in the people and the skill sets that they have.
Thank you very much indeed. Alan?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Eamon, you were talking there, as I picked up on, I was quite interested to hear you say that you can load a lorry up with your sectional buildings and you can pay all the transport costs, you can take it over to UK, send staff over there to put it up, and you can still maintain your margin. And interestingly, we had the construction trade here some weeks ago, and they were telling us about, one of the companies, 96% of their work now was in mainland UK. And I asked the question, well, it's bound to have an impact on your margin, that you're having to go further afield to seek work. And they were saying that not only had they managed to maintain their margin, but in many cases they've been able to enhance it. And that was despite moving materials from here, which is sourced here, over to mainland, sending staff over on Monday morning on a plane and bringing them back on Friday, and putting them up while they were there for a long-term contract, and they were still able to maintain their margin. So there's a trend here, and I just wonder maybe if we shouldn't be getting that message out, that maybe a lot of people are put off competing for work in mainland UK because they imagine that bit of water is going to really erode their margin. But there's an example from and an example from the construction industry that you can compete for work successfully in UK and still maintain your margin. So as I say, maybe there's a message there somebody needs to be maybe putting out louder. I don't know whether, Thomas, you can maybe answer the question like Gordon was wanting to ask the black box guys a couple of questions, but you may not be able to answer this, but if you can, I'm just interested that how a little company like that, no, not a little company, a company like that, based down the Titanic, say I have a rugby club in the middle of the sticks in Cornwall, and I'm looking to put a gym in. How would I find that company, or how do they find the rugby club in Cornwall? So I'm just wondering how the market there, is it word of mouth? Is it a lot of advertising? Is it a lot of advertising in the trade and stuff? So I'm just interested how they actually market what they do. And I say, if you can't answer it, fine. If you can't, it doesn't matter. Also, very reassured to hear that your funding is governmental funding as opposed to direct EU funding, because we'd be asking a lot of other more worrying questions about the future going forward. But so reassured about that. But I would be a little bit concerned, and I'm sure you are yourself, that we may lose some of the EU programmes. And I noticed you did mention EU programmes, and I think what you were saying was you help companies to put together applications and advise them how to go forward seeking European money, and that's an extremely useful process. But I'm just wondering, will you have to rejig your model a little bit if a lot of the EU funding does dry up? And I have to say, very, very impressed with what you do, and I think that there always has been a gap in the market for what you do. Companies, it's not always a handout of money people are looking for. It is just a little bit of help, a little bit of steerage, a little bit of confidence, and also impressed about the guy you put in with Eamon. Not only did he bring a level of expertise that he had at that time, which assisted Eamon, but he was able to then develop his career. So it's a double whammy. You've done two things there, and that you've developed that guy and you've helped Eamon's company. So I'm impressed with that. Very much like the model, and Stephen would be aware of it, that we saw in America with Virginia Beach, where they had that's how the approach they took. Mentoring. It wasn't about handing out money. They didn't hand out money. They simply handed out expertise. Just in terms of your governance, though, I noticed a newspaper article this morning that you have 4 new board members, and I note that one of them is actually Timothy Kearns, who used to work here as a SPAD to Minister Jonathan Bell. Our appointments to your board are the political appointments from the North and South government. Or do you publicly advertise those posts, and what is it you look for if you are publicly advertising yourselves? What do you look for in a director? What do you ask them to bring to your boardroom to assist the company?
Start with the last one first. The appointments to our board are political appointments. So we would always encourage ministers to try and get people with experience of economic activity or in business on the board, or in any of the activities we have, but ultimately it is a political appointment. We don't really have any hand act or part in that. It's just done.
Okay, thank you.
Sir Thomas, just to clarify that, all board appointments are political appointments?
Yeah.
All right.
Could I
Sorry,
just
sir.
clarify on that? The way this works is that there's essentially a default allocation in terms of the appointments from Northern Ireland that applies across what are the executive parties, and then they go forward to the North South Ministerial Council. I'm not entirely sure of the process in terms of how the Irish government, but in terms of the Northern appointments, that's how they're worked out. There's a list that goes to the NSMC that's ratified as and when it's required to be filled.
So they don't necessarily have to have any political skill, or sorry, have any economic skill sets, like, you know, actually have an MBA or actually run a company or been a CEO or anything like that?
I wouldn't presume to comment on the decision-making process as to how nominations are made.
All right.
You can leave that hanging, Steve.
Okay, I'll leave that hanging. Okay, sir.
So, well, just in relation to the chairman rotates, so this time we have a Northern Ireland chairman, the previous time with a Southern one. The minister appoints in those jurisdictions. As I say, they make the nominations, brought out to the Ministerial Council, and they're ratified. And then people take up appointments. In relation to how do you get how do companies like the thing Black Box get, there are a couple of ways. One is through the programme that Eamon has used here called Acumen, where we actually get very specialist salespeople sometimes to deal with particular things. So we had companies like Java Republic, who had no coffee sales in Northern Ireland. We managed to get a salesperson who had a deep knowledge of Northern Ireland. 15% of all their sales come from Northern Ireland. We had a company in Donegal who were harvesting seaweed, buying 2 people. Long story short, we got them a salesperson. They now have Arsenal and Real Madrid among their clients, with 12,000 golf courses as well. So very often it's just getting the right person in order to match up with the market. Or sometimes you're depending on word of mouth, you know, so it just depends on the product you're selling and how many players there are in the market and how specialised it is. So we put a lot of effort into that. The governance issue, you happy enough with?
Yes, yeah.
And the other point
just in terms of maybe the European programmes being scrapped or with Brexit, will you within your organisation, will you have to do a bit of rejigging? Will you have to refocus on maybe the services that you do, beef up some services and maybe reduce some of the stuff that you do?
At the moment, everything we do is actually out to our core funding anyway. The only thing we're dependent on EU funding for is the Co-Innovate programme that we've just got. You know,
but I mean, the services that you offer, you say that you help companies to ready themselves to apply for grants and stuff. If those grants are not there, and that's a service you'll not have to offer any longer.
But it wouldn't just be grants. When we're getting companies investor ready, we're getting them for people to invest in their companies. You know, so it's for equity investors as much, or to go to get a loan with a bank or a facility like that. Like that. So that investor readiness isn't so much for grants. It's really for effectively raising finance through other sources. In relation to our go to tender. At the moment, people that register will go to tender can tender for an EU country, and we have an app so that when you register with it, if any particular contract comes up with your product on it, you get an alert to tell you that somewhere in the EU or in the UK or Ireland has a contract coming up. I don't know how that will adapt as things go on, but we'll continue to move things to make sure that we can keep aligning companies that they're in the frame and compete and get as much business as they can. It'll be a work in progress, but we'll just keep adapting to it. We're a very flexible organisation, so we can quickly adapt to do it if we don't have a big ship to turn around in regards to that.
Congratulations on all that you do.
Thank you.
Thomas, Eamon, thank you very much indeed for your evidence, and thank you very much indeed for coming today. And Eamon, best of luck in the future. And Thomas, crack on. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. All the best.
No, probably not. I'm not even going to have any expertise in HSE. Ladies and gentlemen, are we happy to move on to evidence session from the Health and Safety Executive for Northern Ireland Workplace Safety? Please, Nicola, please, Keith, come on, sit on the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the committee's first evidence session from the Health and Safety Executive for Northern Ireland. The committee has received correspondence from some of the trade unions regarding concerns about changes to the accepted codes of practice, ACOPs. The evidence session will give members the opportunity to consider these issues. May I refer the members to the Clerk's memo on page 23, the Health and Safety Executive Northern Ireland briefing at page 25, the Annex A of the published operating plan, Annex B, the Farm Safety Partnership update, and the NIPSA response as well at page 54. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much indeed attending. And Keith, can I open the floor to you, and please give us your presentation and your views, and we'll move on from there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, members, for the opportunity to address you today. I'm very mindful you have a busy agenda, and we've already supplied a paper, so I'm only going to talk for a few minutes. Really leave most of the time for questions, if that's probably the best use of the time. Can I place on the record my thanks to the committee and members for their support over the past number of years in terms of safety, particularly around the areas of farm safety, construction safety. We really do appreciate that support. The briefing paper provides a lot of background in terms of who we are and what we do, so I'll not go into that. But I would like just to make the point that we're responsible for regulating high-risk industries in Northern Ireland. I think sometimes in the public world it's seen as we're trying to stop just ordinary things from happening. But really we do deal with the most serious issues around construction sites, waste plants, farms, manufacturing. We also work with local government colleagues who would have an enforcement role in lower risk areas in offices and things like that. But again, we're really focused on the most risky issues. What we are really about is about saving lives and preventing injury and ill health in the workplaces. And the paper explains we do this in several ways. The bulk of our work is around informing people, advising, supporting, advising. Of course, we inspect sites and workplaces. And of course, whenever incidents do happen, we have a regulatory role in terms of enforcement action. We also, as the committee knows well, we work with you to make sure that the regulatory framework is kept up to date. I'll not go into some of the trends in detail that are in the briefing paper, save to say that the information we've provided covers a number of areas around workplace fatalities, and you can see that the big bulk of those and the big challenges in relation to the agriculture sector.
Yeah.
Where we've made significant progress, certainly over the past 4 years, probably reduced fatalities by about 50%. But of course, we're as good as we are as we're talking to you today, and we are always mindful and always staying focused on that there's much more to be done. The other trends are around serious injuries and around complaints, and again, you can read that. We're happy to answer questions on it. I suppose looking forward, 2017 will be the year that we try to develop a new corporate plan. It will focus on tackling the most serious issues. We have limited resources. We want to use those most wisely. So we will focus on the most serious, both health issues, and we can talk about those, and the safety issues which tend to make the press more. So that broader occupational health agenda and making sure people stay healthy in work as well as safe in work is a big issue for us. The other issue, which of course is on our radar, is the UK's impending exit from the EU. and again, just being very mindful of how health and safety legislation, some of which originates in Europe, we manage that process with our colleagues in Great Britain. So basically, Chair, that's all I would say at this point, leaving the rest of the time for questions, and myself and my colleagues are very happy to answer questions on anything.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Two particular points. The agricultural sector. And one of the things that many of us of MLAs have been out and about have rural areas. We've had a lot of people talking to us about sort of problems on the farm, particularly with the smaller farms, with older farmers, with trying to maintain equipment, and the lack of training, and it's basically safety awareness for a lot of small farms and the rest of it. And I'd just like you to comment about sort of the great work that you put in place, how we can make sure that we really drive those figures down. Because one of my biggest concerns, and again it's been expressed to me by quite a few of my constituents, is as we're now moving to farms with very sort of older farmers, nobody coming in behind, there's still this pressure to maintain support, maintain the fields, look after the animals, and people are taking far too many shortcuts. And they're taking far too many shortcuts that are leading to potential dangerous situations, and how we can help alleviate that and some of the other things that we might do going forward to that one. The second one is, and I'm glad you brought up the European issue, because the understanding of the sort of all the European safety rules that will become part of will remain part of the UK basis of law, and then will be removed by exception. But of course, one of the great drivers to improvements in health and safety has been Europe and the European push towards to do that. And one of the things I would like your sort of perspectives on is how we can monitor what changes are likely to happen in Europe going forward, because this will be very important for sort of Northern Ireland business, because Northern Ireland business is in a situation where it will have to export directly and have to increase its exports. But in the Republic of Ireland, if there's a differentiation between health and safety rules there and here, that could act as a barrier to trade and the rest of it. So please, I'd be delighted for your observations on both of those comments, please. Thanks.
Certainly, if I make some introductory comments, and then I'll let
certainly. Yes,
Brian
please.
Monson and Louis Burns pick up the detail, I think, on those. In relation to farm safety, it is the #1 challenge for us at the minute. The vast bulk of our fatalities are on the farming sector. The other challenge with the farming sector is there are a lot of incidents on farms that we don't necessarily hear about.
Okay.
So again, keeping a focus on preventing those injuries on farms. The fatalities, unfortunately, and behind all of those statistics are families, hit the headlines.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot happening under the radar that we know from surveys that we're going to have to challenge. I would say that the partnership approach that we have, working with the Farmers Union, working with the Department of Agriculture and Environment, working with young farmers and NIAPA and the Farmers Union Mutual, has been enormously successful, very supportive. But the big challenge remains for us turning the awareness, and there's great awareness now on farms, and all of our campaign feedback would tell us that, into actual not just behavioural change, but sustainable behavioural change, so that when that farmer is on farm dealing with that issue at that time, they think safety. So that will be the focus of a new action plan that we're developing, probably to kick in from April 2017. And Brian can talk in a little bit more detail about some of the new ideas as well that we have around how do we crack this. So we've had some success, but we don't rest on our laurels on this one. It's just, you've got to constantly keep the focus on it. If Brian takes up the farm safety, I'll then talk about Brexit, and then Louis can pick up.
Yes, please. Brian.
Okay, in terms of farm safety, training is critical, and making sure people are well aware of the safety messages has been one of the key pieces of work that we have been doing, and that comes through various different routes, through the press. Although it's not training, actually that awareness is very well developed through the press and through using our colleagues in other organisations, Ulster Farmers Union and the like. We have seen over 4,000 people who have attended or been involved in farm safety awareness training. The majority of that has been on farm at focused farms, run by farmers for farmers, and it's very practical. And the intention is to continue to try and deliver that type of training so that more and more people are made aware. And that's aimed at farm families, not just the farmers, because people who work on a farm, it's a different environment to a construction site. You have a family there, and it's important that we make sure that the messages and the information gets through to all. And that, again, has been some of the focus that we have had. Yesterday, I talked to 30 farmers in the Larne area who were brought together, all older farmers. And again, this is an area that we need to find routes to, who were attending an event run by the Northern Health Trust, and an hour and 10 minutes talked to them. And at the end of it, everybody felt that they had learnt something and was going away enthused to try and do things. Another thing that's key here is some of the research work that we have done has shown that there is a perception that health and safety is either costly or time-consuming. So in our next plan, some of the work we're doing is actually demonstrating to people that many of the solutions actually don't have to be costly or time-consuming. We used one example yesterday, for example, working underneath a roof, which is fragile, and everybody thinks that it's going to cost a lot of money to get in some access equipment to do that safely. Well, actually, if you use lots of round bales and build them up underneath the roof and around the sides of the building, you can't fall any further, and that's something that farmers have, so it just takes a little bit of time to do something like that. So it's taking those good ideas, many of which are already out there, and encouraging that information to be spread around. We have a key piece to do with children and young people. We have done a lot of work in primary schools. Something like 44,000 calendars went out to primary schools. We visit over 100 between ourselves and partners primary schools every year, getting safety messages in. There are other events that go on, and we will be keen to continue that. We want to work closer with the GCSE Agriculture and Land Use qualification to make sure that information is provided and resources are provided to teachers. And we're working a lot with Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster to ensure that health and safety has now become standard in the activities that they are doing, and they have been working well. So that gives you maybe some example of some of the areas that we have used.
Just a slightly more technical point. One of the big problems is obviously use of slurry tanks, and also sort of gas-free. In sort of the oil and gas industry or whatever it would be, you'd have to have gas-free certificates before you'd be able to work there, and you would never have a single-man rule. But you talk to lots of farmers, you know, they don't have the time, they're under time pressure. There's one of them. And one of the things that has been talked about is training up the members of the family to do so you never have a single attempt, which just leads to tragedy going forward. And could you just talk about particularly sort of like slurry tanks and some of the issues around that? Because that, you know, there's been some very sort of awful sort of fatalities and severe injuries, but some people don't realise that if they get caught in the gas and even if they get out, their chances of recovery are fairly limited as well.
We put together a slurry working group with people from industry, scientists, health and safety professionals, and looked at all of the options that were available. One of the concerns is that there's a general perception there will be some technology that we can use which is going to make this safe, and it doesn't. And the key thing is for people to understand the risk and then take basic, simple precautions that people can take. And the big message is that once mixing starts, you get animals out, you make sure the ventilation's good, and you stay out for 30 minutes. And the science shows that if you're out for 30 minutes, on 99.9% of the time, that will keep you safe. So what we have been trying to do is ensure that that message is passed out through training, through information that goes out to the press, through UFU events, NFU Mutual and the like, and within the training that we're doing. I have approved a press release and some work which will go out in the next day or two to remind people coming to the end of the close season for slurry at the minute.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come to. Yeah.
To make sure everybody's reminded of the need. The other area with slurry that people forget about is that falling into a tank is an issue, falling in and drowning. So again, some of the information that we're going out are simple things like once the mixer is put in, if there is still a gap around the opening, put a couple of planks or a pallet over it, the slurry can froth up, and you mightn't actually see where the opening is once the mixing is started. So simple measures like that can make a huge difference. It's also, and we have had huge support from UFU and others, where the leaders in the industry are saying to people, this is what you should be doing. This is what a reasonable person will do, and it's doable. And that's made a huge difference, because I get a major feel now that the farming industry has changed its attitude to health and safety. It accepts that there is an issue, it accepts it has to do something. We just need to keep pushing this forward.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And Brexit.
If I pick up the Brexit point then, Chair,
Yeah.
and then Louis will talk about some of the detail. We've been mindful of this clearly since the vote was called. We have a very small legislative team. You know, we only have half a dozen people, so we're quite heavily dependent on the Health and Safety Executive in Great Britain and watching what they're doing. But the head of our legislation team had prepared a very excellent paper in terms of analysing the situation and the potential implications for us on health and safety legislation. It takes effectively all of our legislation, looks at what's domestic, what's European, what's based on the European Communities Act, what's based on the different orders. So I think we're probably in a good position in terms of understanding the potential challenges. What's less clear is exactly what will stay and what will go and what the mechanisms will be. Your point specifically, I think, around costs to business. Where we will get our information from, how do we stay abreast. So we're very close to colleagues in the Republic of Ireland Health and Safety Authority in terms of there's lots of discussion around, they're very keen to know how this will work post-exit. So I would say as a source of information and a source of intelligence, those connections are very well made. We're also very well tapped into the HSE GB, so any changes in the system, and as Louis will explain, most of the changes are likely to be around single market type issues. Lots of domestic legislation. I think the UK has probably led the way in Europe, and those won't change dramatically. The standards that are set, I think, are respected as world standards. So we'll see little change, I think, in terms of a lot of the domestic legislation that exists. But single market issues, as Louis will talk about, around chemicals and things like that, that's, you know, how do we stay abreast? Do we create our own system? Do we tap into the HSE's new system? It's going to be quite a challenge. Isn't completely clear at this stage, but we will be staying very closely in touch with each of those other regulators and the industry, who aren't shy about coming to us and saying this new regulation will cost us X, Y and Z. Louis, do you want to pick up maybe a wee bit?
Yes, Deputy Chair. As Keith has said, we do work closely with our sister organisation, the Health and Safety Executive in GB. To put some numbers on this, since the 72 European Communities Act, there have been 128 pieces of statutory rules. 59 of these were related to EU directives and regulations, so that's the number that's potentially in play. It's generally accepted that the UK did very well in the negotiations in the making of these directives, so we don't expect a wholesale change. We're not hearing from industry, either locally or in GB, clamouring for a wholesale destruction of these laws, because they actually see them as very valuable pieces of legislation. So a best case scenario, we would be looking at a massive legislative change. Obviously, this is also subject to change, and it may go a different route. In terms of the things like chemicals, importing, exporting, manufacturing, and what way that might be done, the mechanism I am uncertain about. I think we all are a bit uncertain about. In terms of, we have a market surveillance role. We will work closely. We do work closely with our colleagues in GB and the Republic of Ireland, and that would continue. And really, in terms of the policy around this, we would work closely with the Health and Safety Executive in Great Britain. They will be the policy lead on this, and we will assess what they are doing and do the best for this country.
It's probably not a fair question, but what's the possibility of going in the future running a dual HSE system in Northern Ireland that has both the sort of EU regulations and the GB regulations?
My initial thoughts, I couldn't say with any certainty, but I think it would be difficult.
I seriously don't want to put you in a position, and it was probably unfair of me to ask, but one of the things that, just looking forward, one of the methods that our businesses can be able to more freely trade with sort of the Republic of Ireland and sort of into Europe is if we were all using the same regulations. And one of the places we could potentially look at doing it would be here, but you're quite right, it's going to be quite complex.
Yes, but I think we wouldn't see
a huge
hopefully
difference.
A massive divergence from the current position.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Gordon?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much, Keith, for bringing your people in today, and we appreciate it. The farm safety is an issue that comes up regularly, and it is a huge a huge impact when an incident happens, and something we've talked about in this committee some time ago. I suppose my question comes back to what we talk about a lot in business, is about risk assessment. And have we really got to grips with in the processes of risk assessment on farms? And I know we touched on this before, but I personally think we need to do more to get farmers to look at all their processes and try and reduce the risks. And if you can't reduce the risk, or if you can't do away with the risk, I think the way to do it, you have to manage it. So I think we need to look perhaps more at trying to put down a better method of carrying out risk assessments on farms. And I know farmers are reluctant to get involved with documentation unless they have to. But I think it's something I think really does need to be looked at, because you've already made the point. Farms are very busy places. Modern equipment on farms are very fast moving. And a lot of the work is done by contractors who possibly don't know. They don't know the sites, and they don't know the premises. There are a lot of young people involved too with these contractors who are not always trained. The young fellas from school, I used to do it myself actually. You get onto a tractor and try and drive that tractor as fast as you could, but they're not necessarily,
You don't do that now.
they're not necessarily trained. And
Oh dear.
there's also visitors. There's visitors come onto farms, sales reps, and family, friends, and so on. So they are dangerous places, and they're high risk. And I honestly do think more needs to be done to try and manage that risk. One idea we talked about before was about meters for gas, and talked to some of my family about it recently. They were making me aware that they are available now. You can buy them, and some farmers are using them. And I'd like to hear your opinion on the use of them. But I think more needs to be done. We do appreciate the work you've done. The SAFE campaign, I think, has made an impact, and well done to everyone involved in it. I think we're all very much aware of it, and I think it is about continually grinding away, and education is so much part of it, and information. The other thing that comes up on our news bulletins quite a bit is about accidents on construction sites and in manufacturing factories and so on. And I suppose we have the issue there of immigrant workers and the training, the awareness, the risks again, how they're managed, and I think all of these things, the operation of forklifts, chemicals, these are all risks that need to be properly managed. And are you out and about enough on sites and in businesses to monitor what is going on or what's not going on? And I'd like to get your opinion. Do you have enough resources to do what you need to do? Have you enough capacity to go out and carry out inspections and audits and try and make these places everywhere safer for all involved? Thank you. So I'd like some comments, please.
Sure, if I make a couple of introductory comments, I'll let Brian pick up on some of the detail. We very much welcome the members' comments around farm safety. We've worked enormously hard and we're making progress on it. The language you use in farming is different from other industries, and Brian will explain. So the concept of risk assessment, when you start to talk to farmers about risk assessment, which really is just common sense and looking around and seeing what your risks are, they start to glaze over. They start to say, oh, here we go, health and safety. So we've been very mindful of how we talk about these things, because as soon as you walk out your back door on a farm, you're on an industrial site, and that's the reality of it. In terms of gas meters, again, Brian will pick it up. Our position has always been very clear. There are gas monitors around. They tend to need recalibrated and reset, and they tend to go off at very low levels. So we see a role for them as part of a safe system of work that Brian talked about earlier, in terms of staying out of the vicinity and perhaps going back in. But really, there's very little role for them. We can nearly guarantee they will tell you you're mixing slurry and gas is present, and they go off at such a low level, and the gas accelerates at such a high level that you really shouldn't be in the vicinity if one of those things is going off. But again, Brian can pick that up. And in terms of the resources question, which is probably fair for me to pick up, we have made changes in the organisation. We, like others, have had a reduction in budget and reduction in staffing, as the whole civil service has had. We have also, however, been, I think, supported heavily by our Minister, particularly in the past year, where they realised we'd made some change and kept our budget at the level it was at. You would be surprised if I didn't say I could always do with more resource on the ground, because, you know, farming's a good example. 24,000 farms. We have a team of 7 inspectors. You know, do the maths. They can't be everywhere at once. But I think that the change that we made is that we're focusing the resource that we do have, and we're realists in all this, on the most serious issues. And that's the way we're dealing with a lack of resource. We're probably at the level, being fair, where the vast bulk of our budget, 90%, is spent on staff and operating costs. 80% of the staff would be frontline facing, be that inspected or dealing with the public. And it's quite tight, so if we lose a number of members of staff to illness or injury, as we have done recently, then we do feel that, and we can't do all the things we would like to do. But we are realistic. We do know what the overall budget situation is. We assure the committee we will maximise the resource we have on the most serious issues. Maybe, Brian, if you pick up some of the other points.
In terms of risk assessment, the interesting thing with farming is you've got a very diverse, from very, very small part-time farms up to very, very large industrially managed units. And the language that we use has to be different to provide the same end result, is that risk assessment is done. But again, at the talk that I did yesterday, I never once mentioned risk assessment, and yet it was the thesis of what I was talking about. We talk about stop and think safe. We talk about understanding where the risks are in the farm, and we talk about taking a moment to look at the ways that it can be done in a more safe and sustainable way. That's risk assessment in its essence. It's understanding where the thing can go wrong and what you're going to do to prevent that, and having strategies in place. We also talk about professionalising the industry, so training people at a young age and ensuring that there is, for those that are running bigger units, they have a proper understanding of what risk assessment is, the key risks and how they manage them is part of the thing as well. But we, as I say, if I talk to a farmer about risk assessment, the eyes glaze over. If I talk to a farmer about here's the things that can go wrong, what do you do about them, how do you make sure it doesn't go wrong, then that's an interesting conversation and people go away. So it's the approach that we're using has to be tailored to the groups that we're talking to, but it is a key plank. It just maybe isn't seen as something which needs to be bureaucratic. A number of tools have been produced to help farmers, which are tick box type activities which allow them to identify where there are problems, where they can take action, where they get information. They can be done online, they can be done on paper, and those are now being required as part of any application for grants through DAERA. So again, it's to encourage the uptake of the use of this sort of information and the reuse of it, because risk assessments need to be done regularly, and in fact my feeling is dynamic risk assessment, people should be doing that day by day. When I would go out and spread slurry on day 1, the conditions may be completely different to day 2, and you need to think each day, what is it I'm going to do? So possibly having a piece of paper that says here's all the risks is not the answer. It's the understanding of what the risks are and how to deal with them. Gas meters have a place in re-entry to an area once mixing has been carried out and 30 minutes have been given for the gases to dissipate. It is of no use when you're standing beside a pump or a mixer as you start it up, because the rate at which the gas levels increase to a point where they are potentially dangerous in a couple of breaths is such that if you wait for the meter to go off, you'll be dead. You'll be dead, or you'll be on the ground. So our guidance is they have a place for going back in, but do not rely on them as a means to decide when you're going to leave. I know a number of farmers who have got them and said, all they did was tell me when I was mixing, because as soon as the mixer started, the gas monitor went off. That may have a role in reminding somebody it's time to get out. But again, it's back to the education and the understanding of when it is appropriate to use them and how.
Okay, just on the commercial side and the construction sites, Yeah,
in terms
just
of
on
migrant
making a point,
workers.
you know, it's similar, I suppose, really, but,
Yeah,
you know, we do wonder, are you out and about enough in relation to the industrial side of life?
There are 2 points there, Brian will pick up. We do specific blitzes on construction site as well, looking at different issues. The other point you raised was around migrant workers and language issues, and a lot of the materials we will be producing are produced being very mindful of that. Certain industries, like the agri-food industry as well, has a number of migrant workers in processing companies. So a lot of the materials we're producing around safety are very simple, pictorial based, but also translated into different languages as well, to try and make it easy for management to explain the safety rules. And again, when we're out inspecting companies who've got a high proportion of migrant workers, it's a very obvious question for us to ask in terms of, one, how are you dealing with this, and secondly, what help or support do you need? I suppose, Brian, if you pick up on the construction, and do we have enough resource and are we present enough, I think?
Construction side of things, the majority of what we're doing at the minute, other than what Keith describes as blitzes or initiatives, is led by intelligence. A lot of that comes from the sector itself, where people are ringing us up and saying, look, we have a problem with the site, or there's a difficulty, or there's a problem, and we will respond to that. There are also, as I said, specific initiatives which will look at key problems. In terms of migrant workers in the sector, we do not see it as a big problem in the construction sector. The majority of companies are dealing with those issues reasonably well, although we do come across some. And again, it's important that training is appropriate and that information is provided and instruction is provided in a suitable language. Migrants workers are more of an issue, as Keith has said, in agri-food and also in the waste sector.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Just wanted to go back to the points around Brexit, but just as a prelude to that, just to clarify the role of the HSE in terms of, are you purely an operational implementation organisation, or do you as well take the policy lead in terms of advising on additional protections in terms of our own domestic legislation and indeed the drafting of any rules that go forward via the department?
Yeah, we are an operational unit, but we have a legislative team who will work to draft it. We haven't got a massive policy function. We just simply aren't resourced to do that. So we will take help and support from the department to do that as necessary. But we have the expertise within the organisation on some issues to be able to better influence the shape of legislation. So it's kind of caught in the middle, but I suppose our focus is mainly around operational and getting the rules.
Absolutely. I'm intrigued by your comment that you tend to, shall we say, default to reading across regulations from GB and as the default, but there's a wider lesson on that one for other debates we're having. In terms of the Pacific Brexit implication, in terms of our health and safety legislation, can you give us an idea of the balance between what is purely domestic legislation that is not driven by any European requirements, and then in terms of what is actually European, the balance in terms of what is driven by what is European regulation that applies automatically to all member states, as opposed to what are directives where we are transposing into our domestic law the requirements of European decisions?
There's quite a detailed paper on this, and I would have no problem in sharing that with the committee. And I think you know there's a heavy bulk of legislation there, and it's not always as clean as distinguishing between the two. Louis has some details with him, but I think that might be one way of dealing with that in terms of just showing you what the legal base for some of those things are, so we can provide that for you. There are some of the EU stuff that we will have already transposed into domestic legislation.
Yes.
Some of it, as you say, will be directly applicable, and we have that split in terms of looking at, I suppose, where the potential challenges might come from in terms of either making equivalent legislation or a new system that is decided. So if we provide the detail on this, Louis, you can give a very quick summary of the breakdown. Maybe the table is the best way to supply that information.
I think probably the best way is to follow up with a submission to yourselves on that.
Sure.
The numbers I do have is since the 1972 Communities Act, there's been 128 statutory rules brought into our legislation, and 59 of those were related to EU directives and regulations.
Yes. Yeah.
but we can provide more information.
Absolutely. And if you could do so before next Wednesday, that would be helpful. So you won't be around to receive it. Just as a small codicil to that. Just arising from that as well then, to what extent is there a perception in business that there's been a gold plating of any of those regulations into our domestic law versus the acceptance, and we should be encouraging this side of the argument that, I mean, having the highest standards is a good thing in itself, and also that in terms of competition across the European Union and beyond, I mean, that is the expectation anyway. It's not a race to the bottom, this is a competing on a level playing field issue. So is there a perception within certain sections of industry that there has been a gold plating, or is that fairly minimal in terms of health and safety?
It's minimal. I mean, I'll be in post 4 years in a few weeks' time, and no one has ever said to me that you're gold plating these regulations. When we're bringing in new legislation, and the committee had a role in the construction side there this time, probably last year, there were some discussions around the industry about what best suited the industry, but it was never said that, you know, this is the top or this is gold plating EU law, and a big proponent of that was EU domestic. So
on the flip side of that, is there any lobby present for any particular regulation to be removed, even at a European level? Is there anything that's causing particular angst in any sector that they want to deregulate to a certain extent?
Not in Northern Ireland. I mean, the HSE colleagues in GB would have had some representations from industry, and it tends to be around regulations where perhaps the UK didn't do too well in the negotiations. But from a Northern Ireland perspective, again, domestically, we're not getting those approaches, which is, here's a good opportunity to get rid of all that stuff. That's not coming.
And just in terms of tying all this together, and to some extent, I mean, if we know the balance between what is regulation-driven, what is a directive-driven, and then bearing in mind that we continue to be involved even under, shall we say, direct rule, we can remain as a separate legal entity in terms of the UK. If there is a difference in terms of perception around particular regulations between GB and Northern Ireland, there is the potential under, ideally, an assembly that we may take a different view from the rest of the UK. If they're going for a deregulated position on some particular aspect, we have the option to go for to plough our own path in that regard.
We do, and it picks up a point. I mean, the committee will have had correspondence from trade unions in the past around, I think the words tend to be used that we're slavishly following a kind of a Tory agenda, and that's simply not the case, because you know, there have been pieces of deregulation in GB that we simply haven't followed. A good example of that is in terms of the reporting of incidents and accidents, where they've changed how they've gone about things and moved it to, you only report over 7 days. We've kept it as is, so that flexibility to make our own rules, to adjust, to admit our own situation is there, and that's what we try to feed in, and that's what the committee will hold us to as well, and those sorts of things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sinead.
Thank you, Chair. Stephen has pretty much hit on the areas I was hoping to look at, but I suppose rolling a little further on from that, in the event of a Brexit situation where regulations then, you know, have to be revisited, and in terms of the inspections that carry out now, obviously they will have to be reconsidered, and how you go about those, you know, what legislation or what weight is behind any inspection that takes place. And it does seem a little bit ironic asking you about your risk register in terms of, have you any concerns that there could be a vacuum or an opportunity for myths to start to roll out, where people say, oh, that was a European directive, we no longer have to do that, or, you know, that the people start to really sort of cut corners and say that maybe the inspection's slightly different than last time, they didn't ask me to do that or show this. And I would have serious concerns that while things are being clarified on the ground, real practice might be compromised, and ultimately lives could be lost as a result. So I just wonder, is that a risk that you have considered or have any work carried out on?
Yeah, I mean, these are good questions because they challenge us to think through some of these things. It gives us a good basis to discuss with colleagues in the South and in GB as well. My the first point I would make in that is a lot of our inspection activity wouldn't be related to the specific of the regulation. You know, we'll be looking for specific risks and hazards as opposed to necessarily compliance with the letter of the law. So we're in the business of stopping people from being killed. That means identifying the hazards and seeing what action is being taken. In certain specific sectors where there are perhaps EU or domestic legislation, yes, we might be following through to see how does your system comply. But I think that's probably a lot less than our normal. I mean, we'll do 5,500 inspections a year. And I would envisage that the vast bulk of those are focused on the workplace, the risks and the management system, as opposed to necessarily compliance with EU legislation or domestic legislation. It's not that we don't look at those things, but it doesn't tend to be the legislation that will kill people. It tends to be the things people have missed on the shop floor or on the construction site that will do that. And the compliance with the legislation perhaps for us is maybe a secondary type issue. In terms of risk associated with gaps and uncertainty that no longer applies, then I think the onus is on us to work with the industry to make sure that those sorts of things don't arise, that we were very clear about that stays in place. We will expect to see, and we do tend to communicate with industry, be it farming or construction, in advance of inspection initiatives. So we say, look, these are the things we're coming out to look for in a few months' time. Get your house in order, but you can expect that this is what will be. I think that it's fairly straightforward to add on to that confirmation that these things are still in place, and therefore we'll be looking for that. But unless colleagues have any further thoughts on that.
I was going to add at that point, I think something worth remembering is that the underpinning legislation, domestic legislation under the order and under the management regs will still be there. So that still imposes a duty on employers to do all that is reasonably practicable in terms of management. So in that it should avoid a vacuum. In that sense, there may be some debate as to how it is applied across, but what has gone forward be seen as a reasonable standard for compliance. So I think it would fall through that way.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sinead. Thank you. Marvin?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for your presentation and also for the work that you do. I think that many times someone from my own constituency who has unfortunately had to attend a number of funerals in recent times, we all know the impact of particularly farm accidents, and it is appreciated, the work that you do. But in terms of, and I want to concentrate on that because obviously it takes up, as Brian has said, it takes up a large part of your work, albeit 4,000 people contacted in a population of 24,000 farms multiplied by 4 maybe of the number of people who are in the industry. But in terms of how does the industry, in terms of the farming community, see the work of yourselves? Do they see it as a critical friend, or do they see it as an unwarranted intrusion? I wouldn't want to draw the parallel between yourselves and the Education Inspectorate, but obviously teachers don't like to see the inspector come, and they're seen more as a very draconian organisation rather than going into helping the school. Do you find that that relationship has improved over the years, particularly because of the focus that we've had to have around farm safety?
Just a brief comment from me, Chair. Thank you very much for the support as well. It means a lot. When these things happen on farms, we feel them too. And our inspectors have to deal with very difficult situations, and I put on record that my credit to them. I think we have work to do still in terms of our reputation. You know, I've spoken to farming leaders who have said that relationships have improved significantly, particularly around inspections, where really our inspections are about providing advice. They're about going on the farms and helping people to spot hazards. If we see something which provides an imminent danger, then of course there's action to be taken, but there are ways of going about that. But I've also, on the other hand, heard us described as the yellow coats. You know, so we're realistic enough to know that there are challenges there to continue to build that relationship. And I would use this opportunity to say we're interested in stopping people from being killed. We're not pen pushers and rule waivers. We're interested in stopping things from happening, and that means building a relationship. So, I mean, Brian can elaborate on how we do that on the ground, but there's work to be done. We realise that, and we'll continue to work on it.
I think what I would say, one of the things that I've noticed, when Foot and Mouth was here, we stopped visiting farms because of the biosecurity risk. And then we started back. And quite often an inspector would come back and say to us, at a hard time, I took a lot of flack, I got some abuse or physical threat in some instances. Nowadays that's rare. Now we've changed how we do things, we've changed how we speak to people. And as I say, the default is not to serve a notice or to prosecute. The default is to persuade somebody that it's in their own best interests to do something and that there's a way to do it. But there's still work to do. What often inspectors say is when they first arrive at the farm, there is a closed door or a brick wall. And understandably, there's a degree of concern because any of us who are being inspected or tested for anything will have that effect. But it's about developing a rapport. And you know what? Being out there with people and talking to them, quite often you end up sitting over the table with a cup of tea and talking. And I suspect that, yes, there is the threat of a stick if people persistently get things wrong. But actually the ability to talk to somebody, and the people we use have a background in food or in agriculture. So they're able to talk. I grew up on a farm, so I know what it's like. And I know the difficulties that are there. So the answer to it is yes, as Keith has said, we'll still be doing loads more, and there will always be some who will not like it. And there will always be someone in any industry, and we see this, who will decide they will do their utmost not to comply. But actually most people are decent individuals who actually want to do the job in a way they can do it, and that's critical. They're not stymied by health and safety, but they can do it in a safe way, and that's what we'll work towards.
I think it is the case that maybe we need to draw a distinction between the inspections that you carry and DARD inspections. Because I think you'll find a completely different attitude to them. Like, you know, somebody coming in from DARD, and there's hundreds of them, and they come in and they're wanting to see a piece of paper as to when the dog was last, you know, vaccinated. You know, really, those are European regulations that need to be dispensed with as quickly as possible because they are the pen pushers and they are the things that are just generating work for the system as opposed to actually delivering in of real value to the farming community. But I think there is that distinction. And what I want to ask is in relation to collaboration, because Keith, obviously, there are pressures, financial pressures, and there will be more, obviously, in any constrained financial set of circumstances. But the collaboration between yourselves, DARD, and, say, the environmental health in local councils, because therein you have a myriad. You have the lesser, and the other two have, probably DARD has the greater, and then probably second to that would be the councils in terms of environmental health. But is there any discussion around trying to ensure that there is a collaborative approach to the way in which this is done, rather than, because there is an issue about safety of the number of people who go onto farms. So you have DARD inspectors, you have yourselves, and you have a range of other people. How can it be consolidated in a way which gives you the confidence as the Chief Executive that you are fulfilling objectives which are the key objectives for your organisation, to keep people safe and to prevent loss of life, but also to do it in a way which helps in the overall administration of the way in which that's done?
The collaboration and the partnership is the only way that we will achieve success in this. And it's why we're being successful. And that's collaboration between ourselves, and I still call it DARD because I spent so many years in there. The collaboration with DARA is on a number of levels. They're a formal member of the partnership, so they're involved in all of the decisions that are going forward. They help to co-fund the campaign and have been very generous in that co-funding and have kept it sustainable. We're also trying to work with them to see, well, look, what opportunities in terms of the engagement that you have with the farming community can we use to push safety messages? Can we use your inspectors who are on the farm to keep an eye out if we train them?
Yeah. Yes.
And that allows us to get much broader coverage. A bigger partnership is, and you mentioned councils as well. We have a meeting with one of the new councils next month, actually, to talk about farm safety specifically, so they've come to us. You need to be careful in terms of farming as an industry. You've got to be careful that the people who are going on to do inspections come from that background and can be easily accepted.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't just use, because you have resource available, just use it. You've got to be quite selective, but there's a role to be played there. And the biggest issue in terms of collaboration is with the broader industry. And we've seen initiatives where Outside of the partnership, which has a few young farmers and a few mutual, we have also got affiliates. So we've got companies who are willing, agri-food companies or agri-sector companies who are willing to play a part because they interface with farmers. We'll provide training for them. They'll provide sponsorship for the likes of our calendar. So that collaboration and partnership is the only way that we will fix this particular challenge. And we try to get everybody to use the resources that they have as best they can. So we'll continue to do that.
Okay. And just in conclusion, in terms of the schools were mentioned, and obviously I know from my own experience in terms of my own son, who did a course just prior to him leaving secondary school and now works in the industry, and that gave him some skills which were, I think, very helpful so that he avoided replicating the mistakes of Gordon, who just jumped onto a tractor and went as fast as he possibly could. Not as Gordon, the other one. He probably did the same as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of just, because, you know, we talk about vocational skills and all of this, but there is very practical, hands-on, and I pay tribute to Ballymolly High School, who does an outstanding job in terms of educating young men, young people and girls who are identified from farming backgrounds, who are just chomping at the bit to leave school and get back to the farm. And I think it's been a real success. How can we build on that? How can we even expand that, Brian, in a way that is very, very beneficial to us all?
Well, what we're going to do at the minute, we've done a lot with the primary schools. Yeah. We're looking at how we can best interface now with secondary school and also with the agricultural colleges do a fair bit now as well. They've developed a lot of their content now that integrates health and safety with it. We've got that GCSE, the agricultural and land use one, which we're now getting more requests for us to come along and speak to students, to the extent that actually we've trained some people from other organisations, Young Farmers Club, for example. We've trained their people to be able to do those because they're also asked. So we're delivering the same message to those, and we try and tailor it so that it's done in a way that suits the syllabus. Yes. But there's other vocational qualifications, and we get asked for input, and we will send our inspectors or the business advisors along to integrate with that. Young Farmers are another excellent group, and we are looking at the minute at developing a series of specific actions for the next action plan, which promote the importance of health and safety and an understanding of health and safety. And another area that's important, and I will mention it now because it's likely to come down the line, is if an incident happens, and it's unfortunate, but I'll say that there will be more fatalities and there will be more people seriously injured in farms, but that those are dealt with better. So what we're looking at, can we get better training, for example, young people on first aid, so that when the thing happens, and I'm sorry to say it, it's inevitable, that the prognosis for somebody who is injured is better. So those are some of the ideas. Young people are a fantastic resource in terms of something like first aid. They are sponges. They love to do it. I have seen it with children from various groups, and there's ways that we can do that. So there's a whole lot of things we can involve them in competitions. We can, and again, for example, Young Farmers do things like debating things. They do arts competitions. Let's get health and safety into some of those, so that it keeps it in the back of people's minds and encourages that. Formal and informal routes, we're working on them.
Thank you very much, Stephen. But just one thing, so there's Brian. One of the things that is being done at the moment is their push to extended first aid training. So you do the next stage, and unfortunately, it's based on dealing with major terrorist incidents and the rest of it. But one of the things it does, it teaches people very quickly about clearing the airways, stemming the blood, and stabilisation, and things that you can do that can add those extra minutes to get to the golden hour point. And anything we could do to that would be excellent.
And a critical thing with all first aid training is it trains the first aider to think first about their own safety before they get tore in. Yeah. And we have seen incidents in the past where people have been injured as a result of trying to help. So there's another route to improving the knowledge and the understanding of protecting people.
Okay. Keith, Nicola, Louis and Brad, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for your evidence this session. And thank you very much indeed for your very informative answers to the committee. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. See, construction industry managed to get fatalities down to 0. So farming hasn't done. Fishing is terrible. It's just it is, but someone keeping them informed and all the rest of it.
saying about the right people going up the right way.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we're sort of probably a bit pressed for time, but if we move on to item 6, the Renewable Heat Incentive Scheme. The clerk's memo is tabled hard copy this morning. Peter, would you like to say a few words?
Chair, what I'm trying to do is, because we have this additional period, is I'm trying to provide what we would have normally sought to provide for any statutory rule, that is information and understanding of process, and trying to get a view in the absence of a public consultation. It's trying to get a fairly tight and instantaneous view, if you like, to members, because I'm just very conscious of the fact we've not been able to do that yet. So I've suggested a number of actions in the memo that's been tabled. Members will also have had a letter from this Renewable Heat Association. I think that went to every MLA. I don't know whether it was hard copied or emailed, or
I got an email copy of it.
Okay. Yeah. They seem to be presenting themselves as the body representing those who are actually involved in the scheme. So in the normal run of things, they would have been the group that you would have gone to for the consultation on the amendments. So I'm just trying to get all of that, if you like, fitted in to the time that the Assembly has created with the suspension of the debate on the statutory rule itself. So what I'm suggesting is seeking from legal services just their view on process of the statutory rule actually arriving to be laid in the Business Office and then be referred to committee, because once it's laid, obviously it's referred to committee automatically. Second thing would be hearing from this group that represents scheme users. I'm suggesting an additional committee meeting tomorrow afternoon. My reasoning on that is Thursday afternoon is set up for committees, but it's actually only got 1 or 2 that meet, so there's capacity to do it then. We can get a room, we can get broadcasting and so on. So that's my rationale for that. Also hearing again from the Minister and the Permanent Secretary, because by that stage they should know, well, as much as they're going to know just prior to obviously it being debated again in the chamber. So yeah. I was suggesting we essentially look to replay what we did on Monday. So an early meeting, Minister and Permanent Secretary, just to give members, if you like, the latest that there possibly could be in terms of information on what will then go forward into the debate. As I say, it really is just trying to do what we would normally do in terms of providing as much information and opportunity for members to scrutinise as possible. Sorry, Chair, the other thing I've popped into there, because it was an opportunity to discuss, is whether or not committee is still seeking to go ahead with next Wednesday's meeting. And I can go into that in a second later on. Alan?
I mean, I'm not trying to throw a spanner in the works. I just want to clarify this. Somebody maybe not familiar with standing orders and so forth in this building, but is there any requirements of how many days' notice you have to serve for a meeting of the committee? Is there any is there anything that is there a spanner in the works that somebody could throw in?
If I can give members a day's notice of the agenda, which is really what I'm trying to do now, that would give you the day's notice of having it tomorrow with effectively an agenda of that item, of having RHA up to talk. So in that respect, it's incredibly tight, but it does follow process. And at the end of the day, all I'm suggesting here is for committee to decide and do what they want with. But yes, it would effectively allow us to be giving a day's notice with an agenda.
It's just another thing. I know it's really can't ask you to change it, but there is a funeral tomorrow that the Ulster Unionists would be wanting to attend at 2 o'clock with staff members, mother. I mean, we can, if we have to, we'll have to work around that. But it's just
Friday does not do it.
And it doesn't suit. I'm not saying not to go ahead, but it doesn't suit me for the very same reasons. I have a family, no, it's not a family.
Sure, the other thing we have to be mindful of is numbers. All things aside, we are now functioning with 8 members. We need 5 to make decisions. Four can have a meeting proceed, but there needs to be 5 in place for decision making.
Would you be available, Gordon?
So I have to leave. I just have to leave that in members' hands.
Sorry, Gordon.
We supported this in the Chamber on Monday because we believe it is important. Look, nobody's under any illusions here. We're not going to be able to give the kind of scrutiny that we would normally want to this. We've given it a week. I think it would make us look exceptionally foolish if we call for this and can't find a time. Now, I more than understand that people have different reasons for not being here. However, is it possible if tomorrow afternoon doesn't suit, do you have to give a day's notice, or could we come in before then? Or I'm very keen that we find a time.
In terms of the complicated process I have to follow is I have, in anticipation of members saying yes to this, I've already contacted RHA and lined them up. But there's no way they can do something today. The maximum I can give them just to be able to get in and get there is tomorrow afternoon. The reason for going for that slot, as I say, is because it's there and it's available and it's already set up for committee. Thursday is the quietest sort of committee slot.
Can we do it earlier on Thursday?
That was the point.
Yes, I think.
Well, no, I know the author of the letter, Michael Doran, is coming back from Austria tomorrow morning. But I'm also aware that he'd indicated that should there be some delay in his travel or some consequence like that, people would be able to come. It's whether or not I can get them. Are you talking about the morning slot, or if I get a morning slot?
I would be talking about 3 o'clock tomorrow would enable me to.
So
responsibilities go to the funeral in Langer and be here for 3 o'clock.
Because we both should be there.
Later would be that's not a problem, because basically I think we've got this room till
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
all afternoon. So
Chair, can I just make a comment? I appreciate we're all here, and this is, let's make no mistake, this is our last effort or attempt at hoping to stop the £85,000 that's being lost every day before we all leave this building, and we're all leaving. But this is our last attempt to do that. And I apologise for being late to the meeting. I was at an INTO demonstration outside St Mark's High School in Warrenpoint this morning, and I declare I'm also a member of that union. But this is the money they're demonstrating about. This is the money that's being lost to the public purse, and I don't think the public will forgive any one of us, particularly those who are not present, to even attempt to save this money. Now, that said, we stood in the Assembly and we committed to doing whatever we can via this committee, and I hold to that and I commit to it, because we know not only is this money being lost, we also know some of that money is being lost fraudulently, or suspected to be lost fraudulently. So we all have a duty to be here. But no, Chair, I think this is important. I think we have a role in this, but we also are very acutely aware that the Minister for Finance and the Minister for the Economy still have work that should be running unilaterally to this. We need to know, have they, since our debate in the Chamber, made any communication or effort to try and have a business case agreed? Has there been anything else happening that we need to know about? Because quite frankly, and we all are very much aware of it, the limitations of this committee may be that we will not sufficiently be able to get enough over the line before Monday to make this happen. And I know we want to make it happen. So I think we have to cast the light on what is happening elsewhere to get this across the line from Monday, because we could sit here until tomorrow afternoon and be no further on. So I think we need to be advised of that, of what's happening elsewhere, because we could commit 100% to this. Absolutely, 100% to this, and it has no value. Yeah, it has no value if others are doing absolutely nothing other than out canvassing.
Okay, so they put importantly tomorrow. Well, I don't think it's. There's definitely there's a suggestion we could meet later tomorrow at 1500. 3 o'clock.
I can only speak for myself on that. I can't speak for Gordon. And just for the record, Gordon has had to leave to go to public accounts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, Gordon, there's no indication in that.
If I then aim for 3 o'clock instead, and if members can get in touch if they can't manage that, just so I can have an estimation of quorum.
I think it is, though, just worth emphasising as well, you know, even though we've gotten this extra week, it's not going to be the full kind of scrutiny that we would want. Because we had the extra week, that's
we can
why
do a bit more.
support it. Just that we're getting a little bit more evidence in.
Chair, it's probably worth me flagging up that in the absence of a proper or a formalised and time-scaled public consultation, it wouldn't be my advice to the committee either to do more than still note this, and I probably should flag that up now, but this is really just a process of trying to get as many aspects of what we would normally do for a statutory rule in place. So if I move ahead on 3 o'clock, the other thing I need to flag up to members is when Minister briefed committee on Monday, he talked about having no issue with sharing the PwC report with the committee. Now, that is with the PAC. They have it on a confidential basis, but following on from the Minister's indication that he didn't have an issue with that, the PAC will make a decision as to whether or not to share it.
So we can have that tomorrow.
So if they are content, now it would obviously be on exactly the same basis as they hold it. So it is given to them in confidence, and I just need to find out what the arrangements are around the physical handling of that. But because it's confidential, we can't send it out through an electronic committee pack. It won't allow us to send out anything that's...
Sorry, could I intervene? Just to put on record, in receiving that report, to what end it is to allow the examiner of statutory rules to be able to give direction to this committee, as opposed to we will not be receiving it in any light of an investigatory practice, because at this moment in time the clock's ticking, and what we want to happen is this piece of legislation passed on Monday to allow this loss of money to stop.
Chair, it would automatically be shared with her, with the examiner statutory rules. I've already sought agreement on that, and I know the department has gone ahead on offering her communication as well. So what would normally happen, and
we get an update tomorrow as well from somebody from the department to where exactly where we are in this process, because I think that's one of the confusions is.
Probably the easiest thing to do might be to ask the permanent secretary.
Yes, please. Let's see if he's available,
because he'll have an oversight of the process. In terms of the other items I'd listed there, seeking legal advice on the process, that will simply just be the process. Legal services give no value judgment on that. I think they potentially might be able to turn that around by tomorrow.
Okay.
If members are in agreement, I can seek that. And then perhaps the meeting again on Monday for the Minister and the Permanent Secretary. Do members want to make a final decision on that tomorrow?
Let's views around the room.
Let's get it in, pencil in as early as we can.
We have made all the necessary bookings on it.
Yes, have we confirmation of that they are A, available, and B, intending to attend?
We have asked the department for that, and we will wait to see what comes back. We might know more from the Permanent Secretary tomorrow if we can get him in. But we have made the request in anticipation of members agreeing to it, obviously.
I think we should formally operationalise that request now, so there's a maximum chance for arrangements to be made.
If members are agreed, then
Agreed.
we'll proceed on that basis. In terms of next Wednesday's meeting, if we defer that discussion then until tomorrow, and then there are just a few more items. If members are content with that.
Sorry, Alan.
Just, Chair, just maybe if Peter could maybe just remind me of this. Again, I wasn't very long on the committee. I think we met up at the science park, I remember. And there was a great fuss about wanting this committee to rubber stamp something in relation to the renewable heat incentive, and we weren't at all happy, and the chair wasn't at all happy about what we were being asked to do. Could I just be reminded, just what was it we were being asked to do that day? What was the context of that, or what?
That was an SR going through about closure of the Nairo, the two small-scale onshore wind. So that's a more expansive scheme, and essentially that was a specific SR to close it to that specific sector. The issue then, again, was a timescale issue. It was, and I'm recollecting, I think it was negative resolution. I think it was negative resolution, which is a different process in that it automatically comes into effect if it is not prayed against, specific action of praying against it in the chamber. This is draft affirmative, which means it has to be approved in the chamber, so there's automatically a debate on it. With the other one, there would have had to have been a debate called. So, not a dissimilar process. I think more had been done and there was more paperwork. And I think it had also probably been through the executive, although I'm willing to be corrected on that. So it was again the issue there was also tight time scale. With this one, there isn't even the same level of process, I think I'm right in saying, really having been put in place. With the agreed motion to suspend the debate on approving it, it has given that extra time that is quite unusual, I think.
I think we have to be careful, that we're compromising our scrutiny role. We're talking about that, and we've been forced into that. But I don't think that we should take it on our shoulders to ask any of the other elements of the scrutiny process to compromise our approach, and that would be the official examiner. And I'm sure the official examiner wouldn't compromise their role, but I think we have to be careful and step back and let everybody take their own approach to this.
Chair, if I can just reassure committee, I've been in discussion with the examiner, who will do what she does, and there will not be any influencing or change. No,
Well, absolutely. I think it's important to here.
and let me make that very clear.
Compromising.
Also, it's important to remember that the examiner only operates by delegation from the committee, and committees make an agreement at the start of a mandate to delegate statutory rules and other statutory instruments to the examiner's statutory rules to look at. And as she made very clear previously, she would not make any kind of ruling until she is satisfied. Okay. So there's no question there of, there being any kind of.
I don't want us to seem to be right.
No, and I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. But what we've tried to put in place, what we're trying to put in place, has been very much in discussion with people as to what is reasonably possible, without compromising anything.
Okay. Are we?
Sir Chair, can I ask that the clerk maybe get an update from the ministers?
Yeah,
No, we're going to ask the PS to come tomorrow.
Yes, but even in the meantime to find out what has happened since.
Yes, as a daily update would be very useful.
Because we need to know how committed are people to really getting this across the line on Monday.
Yeah, we'll do that for 2 minutes.
I'll talk to the delegate.
So we content meet tomorrow at 1500. Right. Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 7, matters arising. A correction slip for SR 2015-325, Control of Major Incident Hazards Regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. Correction slip is at page 63. Are we content to note?
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, first special report of session on Northern Ireland Affairs Committee at page 7 of the table papers. Are we content to note?
Agreed.
Legislative Consent Memorandum, Digital Economy Bill, Legislative Consent Memorandum is page 65. Are we happy to content to note at this stage?
Chair, there'd be a normal process of writing a report and so on.
Noted.
We can't do it. There's no opportunity.
Okay.
So noting is really all the committee can.
Item 7, correspondence from the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Page 70, relation to Consumer Council's public consultation. Are we content to note?
Agreed.
Correspondence from Asthma Research in Northern Ireland, delivering the next breakthrough. Correspondence on page 71. We need to highlight the fact that this, because of what's happened on this event, now been cancelled.
Due to be tomorrow, but they've now cancelled.
Okay. Consumer Council Annual Inquiry and Complaints Report, 2015-16. Further members of correspondence of the Council at page 73. Adding the publishing of their annual report. Are we happy to note? Yep. Tourism Northern Ireland Awards, correspondence at page 74, informing the committee of the launch of the Tourism Northern Ireland Awards 27 and its calls for entries. Are we content to note?
Yes.
Invitation to the Northern Irish Chinese New Year Showcase 2017. Would anybody like to join me in attending that event?
When is it?
It's not because it's you, but
It's next Wednesday.
It's next Wednesday.
Wednesday, half 5:30 in the Ulster Hall. So it's an actual performance. They have performers come over from China, and it's quite an occasion.
Yes, quite a big thing. So anybody's got any companies who are wanting to do business in China? Okay. I'm happy to attend that part of things. Representation of women and minorities on the boards of public bodies. Refer to correspondence from the Executive Committee, page 14. Are we content to note?
Great.
Do we have any other business, gentlemen and ladies? Okay. Tomorrow, 1500. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much indeed for everything.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee